Buck Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, January 26th, 2022. How the heck are you? I hope y'all are doing well, no matter where you're tuning in from, if it's YouTube, Facebook, checking it out on the podcast after the fact. Thank you. Seriously, on behalf of myself and this whole team here at Drag Illustrated Magazine, thank you so much for being a part of our weekly drag racing conversation. We literally cannot do it without you. We've got a big show for you today. We're going to be joined in about an hour by NHRA Top Fuel sensation Justin Ashley. We are also going to have Jim Epler, NHRA funny car legend. Holy cow, whenever this whole thing started to come together last week, I'm going, Jim Epler, we're going to have Mr. 300 miles per hour in a funny car right here on the show, October 1993, the moment it happened. Unbelievable. So super exciting show. We got all sorts of stuff to talk about. We're staring down the barrel of the U.S. Street Nationals coming up this weekend at Bradenton Motorsports Park. $32,000 on the line in Pro Mod. I think there's 60 cars down there. Based on social media, I think every race car on the planet Earth is in Bradenton, Florida this week. We've also got the first race of Donald Long's Outlaw Radial Tire Champions or Radial Outlaws Championship Points Series, which I think is super cool to see that kick off this weekend. The first of, I believe, 5 events in 2022. For the first time ever, a world champion will be crowned in radial tire racing. We're also 2 weeks maybe? 10 days away from Tom Bailey's sick week, which of course we're going to take part in, very excited about. And then I think a little over 3 weeks from the NHRA Winter Nationals. How in the hell did that happen? We're going to Pomona already? Unbelievable. So we got a barn burner of a show for you today. I do want to remind you guys that today's episode is brought to you by our friends at EliteHP.com. Log on to www.elitehp.com to check out their ever-growing inventory of new and used race cars, parts, and engines. They're right up from the road from us here in Fort Worth, Texas, and have a team of talented racers on their staff that can help point you in the right direction for any and all of your drag racing needs. Remember, it's www.elitehp.com. And of course, guys, I got the squad with me. I got the gang with me. Mike Carpenter in the house, Murder Tundra. It's a big week in the racing industry. I'm not sure that everybody totally knows. This is one of those little bit of an unsung thing that happens in the drag racing world or in the automotive aftermarket. It's SEMA MPMC week. For those that don't know, that is the SEMA Motorsports Parts Manufacturers Council. It's a 3-day event that has historically taken place in Southern California, but in this COVID era that we're living in, they have gone digital, like Tragic. So many people. A little bit of a tragedy. Gone virtual.
Mike's not happy about it at all.
It's my annual reason to go to Southern California.
Yeah, and I'm always like, this is a really cool platform. And you're like, no, it sucks.
No, actually, it is a good platform. I mean, kudos to SEMA and MPMC and everybody involved with that.
You just want your In-N-Out burger.
I want my In-N-Out, and I want to go to Southern California in the middle of January when the weather sucks everywhere else in the country except there.
It's hard not to want to be in Southern California right now. I've always historically called that area the movie set. I mean, the grass is green, the sky's blue, it's 70 and sunny all the time. It seems like it's such a cool place to go. And
now we're just staring at ourselves on TV or on TV.
And we've been doing
on screen.
Like we've been setting just like this. This is what we've been doing.
Basically been doing
this for a day and a half now. And we got another day and a half of it left.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the MPMC conference is basically a 3-day deal where JT, like he's saying, basically it's speed dating. We jokingly call it corporate speed dating. Basically, SEMA arranges a bunch of the motorsports media and motorsports press to come to this event, to attend this event, and they pair the motorsports media and the car culture media with automotive aftermarket manufacturers and brands. So basically, like today, we've had meetings with what drop a couple of names.
Turbo,
Precision Turbo, Holly,
Simpsons,
Race Pack, Stilo, Simpson, Hans.
Holly.
Yeah, Holly. I mean, and it's just one after another, but it's really an awesome experience. It's a great opportunity to interface with people, check in with folks that you maybe don't see very often, find out what they've got on deck for 2022, what their priorities are, what they think, what they're seeing in the industry. They bounce ideas off us, we bounce ideas off them. It's a really, really cool event. And
they even have lounge tables. They even have little lounge tables you can go sit at, in between meetings. And we found a bar. Like there's a bar in
they put that in there just for you, T. They knew you were coming.
I know. I was like, that's where we're going to be.
They did. They constructed a little digital bar.
And we
hit over there.
We were late for the show.
Drinks.
We were late for the show because we were sitting out the bar and ran into some guys and struck up a conversation. We ended up sitting on there and talking to them way too long.
I actually watched a little bit of their podcast. This what is it? Car Guy Confidential or Car Guy Confessions. Pretty cool, man. Check it out on YouTube. It's Auto Revolution Online. Some really cool people. And I just think that, and I don't know if this is what we want to talk about today. There's a lot to cover, and I know we've got a little bit shorter window than we normally have. We'll probably have a slightly abbreviated show today, guys. We have to dive back into meetings. We got some big ones this afternoon that we can't miss. But I will say
it would be good for you, bad for Mike, right?
Right. Yeah, you know what I mean? Thank you. But don't you think it's interesting, like all the content creators that exist in this space? I mean, the meetings that we've had the last couple of days, it's just crazy how many podcasts, how many YouTubers, how many Facebook. I mean, there's a lot of people creating a ton of really cool content in automotive space right now.
We've heard that a lot today and yesterday. And I don't know if we've ever heard that as much as we ever have before,
No, it's a whole new, it's funny because, and I say this lovingly, but our industry, the racing industry, automotive industry is typically a few years behind other segments, right? Other industries, and the trends and the things that happen in those spaces outside of the motorsports life, they kind of arrive here fairly delayed, 3-4, years later. And it's funny because we've heard influencers being talked about ad nausea in the reality TV world and sports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems to have just now really hit home in motorsports and racing, right? I mean, it's funny because I probably heard the word influencer 15, 20 times,
Yeah. And
we even have an award. For the DI Award, Social Media Influencer of the Year, which can be taken to mean a lot of different things. And I don't think it's the traditional selling a product sense, but I think it also speaks to the fact that these companies are having to embrace this. We talked about this with our friends at the bar a little bit ago. You can't just pick one channel anymore. It's not simple. You've got to really be looking at all these different things. So like you said, maybe the racing industry is a little bit behind, but I do see it catching up. I see them embracing these new forms of media, these new approaches to everything we're doing. And like you said, meeting with those people, meeting with other media members is as exciting as meeting with the companies and just who you bump into that you may be able to share some knowledge with.
I've been under the influence for quite some time.
Yeah, JT, it's different than being under the influence. But if that was part of being an influencer, you would be like Kardashian level.
Ahead of my time.
Yes, you're way ahead of your time. You're way ahead of your time. Well, guys, I do want to remind everybody that's tuning in, please smash that subscribe button, smash that like button, help us spread the message, spread the gospel of drag racing. Click share. Share the show with somebody via email. Send them a link. Whatever you got to do, help us. I still believe word of mouth is extremely powerful and perhaps the most powerful marketing method. So make sure you're telling somebody about this. Join the conversation. Let us know where you're checking in from. Throw it in the comments where you're watching from, what you're doing this weekend. I got to tell you guys, I'm genuinely excited to get down to Bradenton this weekend. Have you guys noticed the buzz on social media? Like maybe this has happened in the past and I just haven't been paying as close of attention. But I mean, if at one after another truck and trailer at a gas station headed toward Florida, right? I mean, it seems like I think there's 16 Pro cars.
Everyone has to take that picture too. We've talked about that before, right?
Yeah. Obligatory motorhome, diesel pusher motorhome at the pumps picture.
Yep.
Even though there's really like not an off season,
open trailer, you got to take the picture, right?
It feels like there's not even an off season anymore. There's so many early season, off season, winter season races. We just talked about this. You got Sick Week, Bradenton, Donald's Deal, Pomona's a couple weeks away. I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, just not in the not so distant past, Pomona kicked off everything. Yeah. And that was always like mid February. And now, I mean, we just race year round, but I do think there is still some excitement to get down there, get out of whatever weather you're in, get down to Florida and kind of knock the dust off for the year, even though if that's only been like 20 days.
Let's dive into that right now. How much do you think the forecast will impact the racing this weekend? I'm a racer to the core, so I haven't even checked the weather because I'm going.
We met earlier with Kyle Fickler from Driven Racing Oil, hardcore racer at heart, and he said, "Have you guys checked out the weather forecast for Bradenton?" Which we hadn't. We just assumed it was going to be 70 and you know, perfect. But the weather is going to be brisk. It's going to be brisk in Florida. But tell me if I'm wrong. I think that's what these guys are looking for. That's what, when you roll your stuff out in January to do some preseason racing and testing, you're looking for those conditions.
Dude, the high on Saturday is 50.
I saw, and it's just got like the wind gust thing.
I mean, holy cow. Yeah, I mean, I hate to see the wind gust thing. I never like to see that, especially with these fast cars with parachutes and stuff. But
it does. Man, it says wind gust over 40 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's a little sketchy. Yeah, that's a little sketchy.
That ain't good.
But then Sunday, 52 and 40, and it's just got a blazing sunshine. It's going to get cold. Friday, 66, so it's going to drop a ton on Saturday, and then Sunday is going to be brutal.
Sunday was really cold. What was the temperature Sunday?
52.
Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh. That's the high, though. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know, drag racing, that is a variable that I do think will be interesting because the track, will be killer. Wade, Rich, Vic, the guys down at Bradenton, they always do a bang-up job on the racing surface. But you pair that with crazy-ass cold weather, mine shaft conditions, we're going to see some stuff torn up. We're going to see some tires shaken. You know what I mean? It's going to be a shake, rattle, and roll start to the season, if I had to guess. 60 cars, when you throw in that weather variable, how much do you think that's going to affect, kind of the early in the last couple of weeks we've been talking about, oh man, we're going to see some records set. We're going to see multiple cars in the 50s, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, man. It starts getting cold like this. It starts getting hard to get down that thing.
I think you'll see a couple home run shots. So like you'll definitely see some 50s, but you won't. I don't think you'll see the tight spread that you saw at the Snowbirds, because it's going to open it up, a lot more tire shake and a lot more go big or go home. And so there's going to be a wider spread, but you're going to see some badass runs.
Scott's saying in the comments that testing is rained out today.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see. And Cole Rutkowski, if you're listening, we're going to need another spreadsheet to really see how this the combinations fare. And I wonder if the weather, how the cold temperatures will factor into the success or failure of the various power adders. So definitely a lot to watch.
Yeah, Cole's going to start doing that for all the races now, right?
Yeah, you got another job, Cole.
Yeah,
photographer, machinist, machinist, guru, savant,
spreadsheet,
and spreadsheet creator. Thank you.
Yeah. So Mikey is saying in the comments here, still thinking something like a 372 bump. That I think that's probably pretty fair. 32 car field. I love these big fields with a multitude of different power adders. I can't say enough. And maybe the reason it's so special is we don't see it very often, right? Maybe that's why it's so magical and why I get so excited about it. But just the thought of Melanie Salemi versus Jay Cox and Tommy Franklin and all these different guys and gals, the Pro Charger cars versus the nitrous cars versus the turbo cars versus the Roots or screw blown cars. It's gonna be a lot of fun down there this weekend, and it's my first race of the year, right? So I mean, I guess we're only 3 weeks into the year, so that's not a huge surprise, but I'm genuinely excited to get down there. Going to be spending a lot of time in Florida over the course of the next couple of weeks, right? I mean, coming home from this race, and then we'll go right back down for the kickoff of Sick Week, which I'm, again, excited to be a small part of. And I think we're going to ride in a couple of different cars. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. What do you guys make of, just kind of bouncing around here, I apologize. Oh yeah, Craig Sullivan did make a hell of a pass. Went like 368 earlier in the week. How crazy is it that there's so many cars, so many different combinations that are all so fast in that window, that mid 360s, high 360s, there's a lot of cars capable of producing those numbers.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking.
It's what we've been seeing. It's the evolution of the class, the competitiveness of the class, technology, track prep, tires, automatic transmissions, torque converters, all that stuff.
It's a huge field, and it's nice cars. It's some of the best drivers out there. I mean, my God. I mean, it's crazy. We talked about last race they had there, right? I mean, just the field alone, just looking at the list is just crazy to look at.
It's going to be fun, man. Really, it is. And I think it's fun going to these events that are early in the season because you're getting that. We haven't tore up all of our stuff yet. We haven't had a bunch of bad luck yet. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you roll out to a drag race in like August, or even September, and it's still a little warm, and people are like, "Oh my God, I can't wait till this year's over. We've torn up everything." Or,
what I mean? Look at Swanstrom's car at the end of the no season. Like, man, shit's taped together.
Beginning of the season, it's all one color and it looks shiny and nice, and the next thing you know, it's got different colored doors on it, and the wing's been ripped off twice, and it is you nailed it, Mike. That optimism that exists early in the season, it's a rare thing. I mean, it's PRI is fun because I think you get everybody while they're catching a breath. You see everyone while they've kind of put the racing season behind them. Sorry, I'm bouncing into the mic here, but they've kind of put things behind them. Everything that's happened has already happened. It's done and over with, and it's time to celebrate a little bit and bask in the glory of another season gone. Fast forward a month, and it's like everybody's revved up and excited, raring to go, shaking out new combinations, getting out their new car. Speaking of new cars, how about this new car from Mark Woodruff? Did you see this thing?
Yeah.
Brand new Larry Jeffers built race car.
Yeah,
good looking son of a gun, man. Holy crap.
Yep. Good looking.
Yeah, it's good looking. It looked good under the lights at PRI. I almost needed sunglasses to look at that thing.
I'm anxious to see. For me, there's a couple of stories because we're going to see a lot of guys on big tires. Like I thought about this early in the week. It seems significant that Mark Woodruff's down there with a big tire pro mod, right? I mean, that's a guy that has just been married to small tire racing for as long as I can remember.
Don't get us started down this path.
Affiliated with Radial tires, and to see that changeover. And from what I understand, Mark Mickey's going to be wheeling that car this weekend, so that's pretty exciting. But it is. I mean, I don't know. I definitely think it's a storyline, is it not?
It is. It's definitely a storyline. It's controversial, and I think we've talked about it plenty of times on here. What we think we're seeing happening. And we just kind of, those are more proof in the pudding when you see guys like that making that switch. So I just feel like we're going to see more and more of that.
I'm curious, and JT, would you grab a photo of Mark Woodruff's car so we can throw it into the feed here? But I sometimes wonder, like big tire racing, we got to be honest, call a spade a spade. I mean, it definitely fell off. You know what I mean? Pro mod style racing. There was a lot of, I won't say dissension, but guys were kind of split up amongst a slew of different series at different times in the past. The ADRL was strong, or XDRL's popping off, and they're starting up something. And then the PDRA comes along, and NMCA has been there the whole time. And there's these small sanctions and series putting on events. I think it's interesting, because big tire racing kind of took the back burner, so to speak, while radial racing exploded, right? I'll never forget going to Huntsville Dragway, April-ish or spring of 2006 for George Howard's Outlaw Nationals. It was like a married event with Johnny Finn's Orska Series, the Outlaw Racing Streetcar Association, and there was a Outlaw 10.5 race that paid $50,000 to win, and there was a pro mod race that paid $5,000 to win. Right now, granted, that's been 16 years ago, and I remember that moment going, okay, the tide has officially turned. Like, I'm not saying pro mod wasn't going away or anything like that, but the onus, the marquee attraction was Outlaw 10.5. Not too long later, right? Outlaw drag Radial, and then Radial versus the world. And my point is that all the momentum shifted towards small tire racing, no wheelie bars, small tires. And now we've seen, as you've mentioned on this show many, many times, Mike, that cycle, it's so cyclical. The Radial wave, I feel, has died down, right? Outlaw 10.5 racing, by and large, is gone. Not entirely, but nothing like it was at that point in time. And pro mod racing is, specifically Outlaw 8th Mile pro mod racing, is blowing up, right? I mean, there's more places to race these cars for good money than you can shake a stick at. And I say all that to ask this question: will we see a resurgence of small tire racing in the few years? I mean, in the next few years, because I wonder sometimes, did all that enthusiasm, all that excitement, all that momentum that existed in small tire racing, was there enough of it to see it come back around? You know what I mean? Or was it when we look back on the history of drag racing 10, 20, 30 years from now or whatever, will that be a really concise window, a few years stretch that type of racing was relevant, or will we see it cycle back around?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to predict. And I think the initial cycle was just built on when you start paying that much money to win those races, and you've got guys that have the ability to build cars for both series or make a decision. Am I going to build a pro mod or am I going to build a radial car? And they're looking at those payouts. Which one are they going to go? Which one are they going to build? So naturally things start to flow that way. And then I think that also is what caused it to start to trend downward, because now the cost of entry, the cost of being competitive is too high. And then you end up with just a handful that can really do that. And so it sort of swings back the other way. If we see the pendulum swing too far back towards big tire stuff and it gets out of hand, I could definitely see, it's like a market correction or a reset. Yeah. And then everything kind of guys that are on the fence, or someone pays huge money to start, winning these one-off radial races or outlaw races, you could see it swing back. I think the key is, in the middle of your explanation as to what happened with this whole deal, the fact that you can race one of these pro mods at so many different venues around the country and so many different series, I think has swayed that. And if we look at radial racing, you can really only race those things, in my opinion, twice a year at one track.
Well, yeah, because you track prep. I mean,
yeah,
like,
if you're going RVW racing, yeah. I mean, we've seen that. So the fact that you have all these options and you can build a car that with only minor changes meets a huge subset of rules is why pro mod is healthy. And we've said that for a long time. The more you try to create classes that fit cars instead of cars that fit classes, I think that's worse for drag racing. I think when you have a standard set of rules, a handful of classes, and then you allow guys to build cars to fit those classes, that's healthy for the sport.
Well, and it's interesting because Radial versus the World, Donald Long's rolling out the brand new Fuel Tech Radial Outlaws Championship Series. It's a 5-race series that's going to take place at kind of all the staple radial tire, small tire tracks, right? I mean, there's a couple of new ones on there, but Orlando Speed World Dragway, South Georgia Motorsports Park, of course, Bradenton. The first race is this weekend as part of the U.S. Street Nationals. Interestingly enough, Radial versus the World's not being contested as part of this championship situation, right? It's Pro 275, it's X 275, it's limited drag radial, aka outlaw drag radial, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that's kind of interesting because I often thought the reason Radial versus the World might make it, right, and may continue is because they're basically pro mods. They're pro mod cars, and we've seen guys have some success swapping back and forth. Right? Hey, I can go run. I mean, probably the best example of really having success with it was Kevin Rivenbark in the white Galat Motorsports Proline Pro Charger powered Camaro that won Sweet 16 on radials, $100,000.
Stevie,
huge win. Yeah, Stevie Fast Jackson went back and forth a lot. I mean, those cars were successful in both worlds, right? Even though it took wholesale changes, but having that multi-purpose race car seems really valuable, right? And I thought we would see Radial versus the World maybe maintain a little more energy than it did, but I really point to Drag Illustrated Award, one of our award nominees, that 349 from Daniel Ferris. I think that run, we probably don't even know how much of a hammer dropping that really was. Now, there was a lot of cars close, not a lot, but there were a few cars that were in the wheelhouse of that. We saw Stevie go bottom 350s a bunch. But man, when that happened, it just felt like the air was let out of the balloon a little bit. Like, oh shit, now we got to run 340s.
Yeah. So you're not looking at that going, yeah, let's go build a car and go do that. You know what I mean? It's like, well, screw that. Where else can we go? I mean, really.
And I honestly think that most of the guys that are ringing up the phones of chassis builders around the country right now, if you're going to make that kind of investment, you want to be able to race quite a bit. Even if you can't go commit to an NHRA series, or if you can't commit to chasing points with the PDRA, or maybe you're a Midwest-based racer and you can't commit to competing for points in the Midwest Drag Racing Series or what have you, you've got a car. I mean, you can build a car where you can dabble. You can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, bounce around to some of these big events, the Snowbirds, the U.S. Street Nationals, a handful of other big events, Streetcar Super Nationals out in Vegas. I mean, there's a lot of options, and I think that that's a big part of it. I mean, I remember on this very show many moons ago now, JT, do you remember when we had Mark Mickey? I believe Jason Carter and Mark Mickey came on the show. It's probably been like 4 years ago, maybe longer. They talked about, Jason's like, if we went to every RVW race that was on the schedule, there were 22 races. I think that would have been in like the late 2000 teens, like 18.
That's when they were having them everywhere. I mean,
they were everywhere. Yeah, I mean, you had Outlaw Streetcar Reunion, you had 3 Ducks races, you had
6 or 10 cars, 6 cars,
Radial Wars from NMCA. I mean, there were so many places to race. And it's weird because is that one of those things that's the ultimate double-edged sword? Like, you have to have all those options to develop a big inventory of cars, but having all those options splinters that inventory. It's tough
because that inventory, there wasn't a big inventory. And then, I think someone said lights out 7, it started to kind of drop downhill. And you could say that. And, so then you have less cars, and then everybody's still trying to ride the wave of the Radial versus World. But now we don't have enough cars. Because we've let all these pro mod, these specially built cars for the class into it, and now the guys with the Cutlass or whatever, are sitting there going, well, shit, or the Malibu, or the stock looking vet, they're going, well, I'm gonna have to go spend a couple $1 million if I want to, stay competitive in this, like.
Well, I think that also radial racing, the focus, especially in RVW, on home run hitting, setting records, knocking down the scoreboard, that further accelerated that. And the fact that the new series that Donald's doing focuses on series, like these other classes are going to be competing in a series for points. So it's more of a focus on racing. And I think shifting the focus away from record setting back to racing, even if it's not RVW.
They did that for too long, though, don't you think?
Yeah,
Mike?
a little bit, yeah. But I do think that it will help these other classes, these other radial classes, to go out there and know that they're not just going to race twice a year for a big payout and try to set records. They got to run a series. I think will help reset that a little bit, and that's probably what Donald's thinking.
That's my guess, and I think you're probably right. I'm personally not a fan.
I'm not in the business of guessing what Donald Long is thinking.
No, but I mean, I do think that is a step in the right direction. And I wonder if there was like a championship series sooner, could some of this have been maintained? But it did. Those races in Valdosta, I would get frustrated and I would defend those events because I thought some of the most interesting ones I ever went to were the ones where there wasn't a ton of records set. It wasn't about who was going to break the next barrier. It was badass racing and a guy that, I mean, I remember when I was down there in October for South Georgia Motorsports Park for No Mercy a few years back, and it was unseasonably warm, right? It's hot. And Jeff Nizer, Nine Fingers Nizer, comes out with a nitrous car, wins the deal. Mm-hmm. And he didn't do it by having the fastest car on the property. He didn't do it by blowing everybody's doors off. He did it by making good runs, making good, consistent runs. And I think that was actually, for me, as exciting as seeing Daniel Ferris go out there and go 349, which is obviously a big deal. But everybody in the industry was pissy because, he didn't even a race if there wasn't a record set.
Right. And so, I think leaving those races, everyone focused on, like you said, the records. If a record wasn't set, it wasn't a successful race. And we don't even remember who won. We remember who set a record or who went flying through the air. Yeah. I mean, if it's not one of those two things, it wasn't successful. We put these guys, if you won or were successful at these events, we tried to, give these guys some juice and put them on the cover of the magazine, do features on them to really sort of reiterate the focus on the racing and not so much the records and the crashes and the spectacular part. But like you said, we talked about that a lot. It's kind of a shame when you leave a race and you forget who won the race, but you're trying to remember, or the only thing you remember is who set a record. I don't agree with that thinking. And I think that that's part of the problem in radial racing just as a whole, but we'll see how this new series plays out. I'm excited to follow it. I'm excited to see how it works out.
Yeah, and I really think that it's kudos to guys like John Sears, guys that have, stayed the course, fought the good fight, squabbled with racers, and done all those things to try to maintain, some semblance of parity, right? And a situation where anybody could come out and win, and it's not just a foregone conclusion that one of two guys are going to come out and dominate. I really think they've done a fantastic job with it. I'm excited to see the deal kick off this weekend. It's going to be, you said something I thought was fun to talk about, trying to give these guys some juice. I saw someone in the comments a few minutes ago mention that Radial racing is, the star power isn't what it once was, right? We don't have Stevie as consistently in that world. We don't have the Keith Berrys, for instance. We don't have Daniel Ferris or Rob Valda. I mean, there was just a lot of personalities, a lot of people that were Mark Mickey, obviously. I mean, there's a slew of these guys that you got used to seeing and you kind of got to know over the course of time. And you pick a horse and ride with one, and people rallied behind that type of stuff and waved their flag. A lot of those guys have found other places to race or moved on. So it's, I think that's a big part of it. And I think they're going to have to really pour the coals to the promotional effort of the stars of Pro 275. That's
time for new guys. It's time for us to
time for news guys.
Hitch our wagon to those guys and to pick one and ride with those, and not. It's awesome, and I love to see some of the original players maybe come back into it or show up at some of these events. But yeah, let's promote these new guys. Let's get some new blood in this deal. That's going to help it a lot too.
They got to help us, want to watch them though. I mean, they got to put themselves out there. They, the guys, when Radial versus World was so popular, these guys were on the internet talking shit.
Oh, it was constant arguing, constant
back and forth, making videos, whatever. But they were putting themselves out there, and we're not seeing that near as much anymore.
Yeah, I definitely don't think so. And it's a great little transition here, if you will. And we've got a little bit of time here, another 20 minutes or so before we will be joined by NHRA sensation, Top Fuel sensation, Justin Ashley, and legend Jim Epler. Very excited about this, but I do want to remind you guys real quickly that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you each and every week by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about our friends at Redline. Make sure you tell them we sent you. Log on to redlineoil.com to check out their full line of parts. And I got to tell you, if you look at the entry list down there, there's a couple of surprising names on here that I saw. Nate Van Wagenen, editor-in-chief at Drag Illustrated, threw into our little private chat this morning, our group chat this morning. Callie Mills, right? Someone who's making her name on the No Prep Kings Trail. Mike Decker III, as well as Scott Palmer, all on the Pro Mod entry list. I mean, it tells me there's some pretty significant momentum amongst outlaw 8th mile Pro Mod race. And I got to tell you guys right now, like if we dive back into, I won't say if, when we dive back into the race promotion game, I don't know how you could do anything other than an outlaw Pro Mod race right now. I mean, an outlaw 8th mile Pro Mod race, there's a slew of cars. I don't know how you get away from that. I mean, that's clearly.
Are you dropping hints right now?
That's a recipe that would work. Do you agree? I mean, it's clearly working.
I do. I think that is, like you said, a show of strength for all the reasons we talked about previously. And like you said, these new names on this list. So it's strong. It's strong right now. And honestly, somebody that's been around it for 20 years, at least as far as this 8th mile Pro Mod stuff, I'm excited because there was a time we were worried about it. We were worried. We've seen the ebbs and flows of it. And there have been many times where we were worried about this brand of drag racing, and it's very strong right now.
I think we talked about this before the show in the green room, like going back to the DI Awards, and I do want to remind everybody, the Drag Illustrated Awards coming at you next Thursday night, the biggest award show in drag racing, live February 3rd, 2022, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Genuinely looking forward to this deal. It's going to be quite exciting. But one of the categories in there, Promoter of the Year, this was obviously much talked about on the internet, on social media, but one of our nominees, Tyler Crossnow, I mean, I think the PDRA had their best season ever in 2021. Like, despite everything going on in the world, they had they're far and away their best season ever. They have stood the test of time, right? And I really felt like they kind of came into their own in 2021. And I wonder how much of this early momentum, like this big 60-car entry list at the U.S. Street Nationals, how much of that momentum will they be able to carry into their season opener come March and April?
Go T.
Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I think a lot. I mean, we see a lot of the hitters. Pretty much the whole list is the PDRA hit list, but combined together. I think it gives those guys kind of another test session before they roll into the season. I think it actually helps strengthen that first race of the PDRA season. I think if you ask Tyler and Tommy and Judy, they probably agree with that. They did have their best season in 2021, and I think they've figured out what works and what doesn't work, and really kind of doubled down on the things that do work, and just getting the data, getting the feedback on what works and what doesn't, and just moving forward with that. And like you said, kind of coming into their own. So I'm excited about it. I think they've got some exciting things that they're working on for this year, right? As far as media and promotion,
absolutely,
the things that we usually focus on and talk about. So yeah, I mean that, and at this point, PDRA it's not the new kid on the block anymore. It's a solidified series. I mean, it's like the old veteran at this point in this deal. So
they treat the racers good too, right? I mean, they treat the racers good. They treat staff good. They treat even photographers, media. They treat them great. Order meals in for everybody. I mean, it's crazy.
Huge banquet at the end of the year.
Right. The banquet is so well done, and they just treat everything like a family. So people want to go race there. Like they don't want to miss a race. They want to support them. It's a great deal.
I think they've got a really great deal going. And I got to tell you, there's some influencers. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, in social media influencers, but there are a multitude of influencers in the sport of drag racing that don't even post on social media. And one of them that comes to mind, J&A Services, that entire race team, right? Jim and Annie Whiteley, Brandon Snyder is affiliated with that team. I think it's interesting. It will be cool. Or I don't know if cool is the word. I think it's going to be, I keep saying I need another word for interesting. I say that one a lot. That could definitely be a drinking game. But isn't it going to be interesting to see how that unfolds with Brandon Snyder apparently not running NHRA Pro Mod from what we understand in 2022 and focusing all of his attention on Midwest Drag Racing Series Pro Mod division? I think that there's some things like that happening that, thank you, Brian McCaddy, intriguing. I really do think it'll be interesting, intriguing what happens and how that impacts other people, because let's be honest, drag racing is motorsports in general, well known for being a little bit of a monkey see, monkey do industry, right? So if if all these other sanctions in the series start to get some momentum or more momentum than they already have, what's that going to do to the NHRA Pro Mod series in 2022? I'm genuinely concerned. All the momentum that existed a few years ago seems to have been lost. Now we're in some sort of rebuild moment. And I'm just going, man, there's so many good options that it's going to be difficult to embark on a rebuild right now for what is undoubtedly the most challenging and expensive form of pro mod racing that exists. How are they going to bring that back to its, the luster that it enjoyed a few years ago? I don't know, especially with all these badass. I mean, we completely spaced NMCA. I mean, they are rocking and rolling as well. You got guys building cars to go run an MCA. Craig Sullivan comes to mind, and the Merc that has kind of gone viral on social media, a beloved race car and a beloved racer. I mean, his program is focused almost entirely on going NMCA Extreme Pro Mod racing, right? So when you have all those great options, because I don't mean to say that the NHRA's Pro Mod series benefit the most from the fact that there weren't that many other good options? And if you wanted to go race and do it big time, you had to go there. I don't know that's the case today.
That was the case at one point. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. That was the case that I think I triggered my Alexa or something. You guys hear that?
I do hear it. Yeah. Alexa, stop.
Alexa, stop. All right, there we go.
Alexa.
Don't ever trigger your Alexa mid-show.
Yeah, mid-show, mid-podcast. Alexa.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we saw that in NHRA. They were the only game in town at some point. We talked about how they benefited from that. But I don't know what's going to happen. These rules, this stuff's going to have to play out. This is going to be an interesting season. But we've talked about this, I think a lot, and it's part of the reason we're not doing a race this year. There's a lot of fluctuation going on with NHRA. Maybe it'll be settled after this year. And then they'll get a little more ironed out. But competition, and we've talked about this too, IHRA, when they were at their strongest, competition is healthy. And I think that part of the reason you're seeing so much health in 8th Mile Pro Mod racing is because of all the competition, because of all the series, Midwest, PDRA, NMCA, all these things we've talked about kind of competing with each other. They're friendly. These guys are all are all buddies, but they're all kind of competing for who can do it the best. And when NHRA lost their main competition in IHRA, I think you could possibly start to draw a line right there as far as when things started to change. So we'll see.
We may or may not get to check in with Jim Epler, but when I was researching him earlier in the week and just kind of getting some notes put together, there was an interesting quote from him that was in an old article from National Dragster like many, many moons ago. But I found it curious that he said they had dived into top alcohol funny car racing whenever he was kind of getting into drag racing, when he was first getting started, and they weren't exceptionally successful. And they made the decision to move to nitro, to move into the pro ranks, to go nitro funny car racing. And I think that's normally the logical progression, or what people assume happens is like, okay, we're kicking ass and taking names in top alcohol funny car. Now it's time to graduate up to the next level, right? Jim Epler's approach was much different. He said, hey, we're not doing exceptionally well here, but if we're gonna do well someday, we're gonna have sponsors, we're gonna have promotional partners, and we can't get those at the level we need them while racing top alcohol. So he went nitro racing because he knew that was the only place he could go to get the visibility necessary to sell sponsorships.
That's pretty cool. You know, I mean,
right?
really,
I mean, yeah. So you think about it, because if you think about stick and ball sports, you're really good in college, then you move up to the MLB.
Well, Alex Laughlin has talked about that. Yeah. Even if he's not going to go out and win 10 world championships in Top Fuel, being out there and getting that visibility for his sponsors trumps all. So, I mean, you just never know. You kind of got to put yourself out there, see what happens, but at least you're going to get that visibility that nitro brings. So,
the reason I bring it up is because I think that's kind of the situation that existed previously with the NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series, is that you would still be better off to go there and struggle. You know what I mean? Like, even if you knew that you couldn't probably run with Todd Tutterow, or you couldn't go run with Stevie Jackson, you would be better off to go run the NHRA Pro Mod Series and be a middle of the pack guy, or fight to qualify, because that's where all the juice was, man. That's where all the energy and the momentum and the visibility, the lights, the cameras, that's where it was at. That's not the case in 2022. I mean, hell, you got the PDRA putting out essentially full-length feature films about their racing series with the help of guys like Corey Mahalik. The NMCA, they do all the pomp and circumstance. Midwest Drag Racing Series got funny cars on a pedestal, top alcohol funny cars on a pedestal. They got some of the best pro mod racing that's going on in the country is going on here in the Midwest. There's a lot of options to go get in front of pretty big crowds, race in front of sizable audiences, and do it away from the NHRA, and in a lot of cases for a lot less money. So it's a really tough situation that I think is going to be very difficult to navigate for the NHRA as they move forward. I don't know how they're going to re-energize that category while there's so much competition.
Yeah, kind of the go big or go home, what you're talking about with the money, you know, and going up there. I remember an old farmer was building a bunch of hog barns, you know, and I mean, he built like 10 of them. And I go, holy cow, you know, how can you afford that? And he's like, got a good banker. I'm like, but that's a lot of money. And he goes, what's it matter if you're gonna file bankruptcy? What's it matter if it's 10,000 or 110,000? You know, it's kind of.
Well, it's kind of true.
This Missouri story has been brought to you by JT Hudson.
An old farmer one time told me, if you're gonna go belly up, you might as well go belly up big.
Go belly big, yeah.
Oh, it's true though.
It pertains to everything, Mike. Though, come on.
No, it does. I'm just giving you shit. But yeah, you're right. And I think another form of competition, which I wanted to touch on this before we get on into our next thing, in PK, we talked about that being another form. We got to talk about it for NHRA, and there was even some talk that is NPK going to be back? No Prep Kings, are they going to do a season 5? Which we thought,
I don't know how that was possible.
Yeah. I don't know, but there was a lot of talk about that, and finally we got the full schedule for 2022. I think it was released yesterday, right? We saw it, started seeing it pop up. So it looks like a handful of new tracks on there, but we see a lot of similarity to 2021 schedule. You want to run through that deal real quick?
Yeah, let's do it. Does anybody have it in front of them?
Let's see.
Hold on, it'll take 2 seconds. It's all over.
Yeah.
Were you surprised the schedule drop got? I really was. I mean, it just speaks, that deal has leveled up in a big way. The No Prep King series has taken on a life of its own. People can say that we're jumping ship or whatever, we're on the bandwagon. But I mean, I think the whole industry can agree that deal went from a TV show and kind of reality TV that was happening and a good thing, no doubt about it. But it wasn't this central topic of conversation the way it has become in the last year. I mean, we saw that deal take on a whole new life in 2022.
Well, this is a good point too. Darth Sniper, Mike M. I like your name, dude. I tried getting a few people into drag racing. One thing that really hurts is that classes, times, types of racing are too varied and confusing to new people. This is a huge deal.
We talked about that a lot. Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot, but that's something that No Prep Kings addresses. All the cars are relatively similar. Well,
I've got it, Wes. I've already uploaded.
There are no times on the scoreboards. There's really not a lot to learn. It's just this car versus this car, this guy versus this guy or this gal. So that really simplifies it. And I think that's part of the attraction. And we had a conversation in one of our MPMC meetings earlier about finally someone maybe gets the financial wherewithal or the, whatever desire to go drag racing and rolls out there for the first time and maybe doesn't know how to do a burnout or stage or does any of the 200 ways to screw up a run in a drag race, or not even get the car staged. And we're picking on them, we're laughing at them, we're get off, back up. Can you could just see the starter.
So true.
Get the hell off my track or whatever. And so it's like we've got to have sort of a more welcoming entry level grassroots type of way to introduce these people to this racing and to make it more accessible. It's hard enough to get people to a drag race to begin with, and then you're going to run them off the very first time that they make a mistake or do something that isn't the proper way or the way that a professional would do it. So these sort of mainstream ways of racing, which I think No Prep Kings leads the way, is the way we get more people involved and don't run them off at first sight. So
whatever, Mike. Anyway,
to your point, Darth,
I agree.
Darth Sniper, Mike M.
Okay, here we go with the Street Outlaws No Prep King season, and we'll burn through this. We've got at least one of our guests in the green room. We're waiting on Justin Ashley, guys, so bear with us here. But Street Outlaws No Prep King season 5, my goodness, Palm Beach, Florida, from kicking off the season, the first weekend of April, it looks like. Palm Beach, Virginia. We're headed up to Maple Grove, New England Dragway, National Trail, Beach Bend, Brainerd International Raceway in Minnesota, Houston Raceway Park, Tulsa, Firebird.
Beach Bend and Brainerd are new, and Houston, are they not?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. We also got Firebird in Tucson, Bandimere Speedway. That's always a big one for these guys and an interesting one going up there and racing at altitude. Summit Motorsports Park in Norwalk, another one of our DI Award nominees for Track of the Year. Rockingham Dragway out in your neck of the woods there, Mike. And right down here in my backyard, the Texas Motorplex outside of Dallas. This is going to be a really interesting thing, man. 15 races. We had heard rumor early in the season that maybe there would be more races in 2022. I'm actually quite thankful that there is not. I don't know about you guys, but I was genuinely concerned that this is one of those things that was going to grow too fast and not be able to support itself, not be able to sustain itself over the course of time.
Well, if you look at the schedule, there aren't too many back-to-backs. I think they race every weekend in the month of June, but then none at all in July, I believe. I got to pull up my calendar again. But
yeah, I believe there's a break in there.
Yeah, so it's a little more racer friendly than maybe we were thinking we were going to see. So they had a lot of back-to-backs. They had a tight schedule last year. I think they got a late start and kind of had to throw some races in, and they even added some at the end of the season. So I really think this is actually going to be a little more racer friendly than we had initially thought.
I agree. It's going to be fun to watch it all unfold. I mean, to think about all these major events that are on the schedule, it's significant. I mean, the fact that there are this many major events, I think back to last year, some of the events that really stood out, like the Midwest Drag Racing Series, when they went to US 131, coupled up with their funny car event that they had, and the place was packed. You've got all these, independent series and independent events, the Snowbirds this weekend, Lights Out, No Mercy, all these small, independent outlaw events that are doing extremely well. Then we have all these sanctions and series that are doing well. NHRA putting on a couple of all-star shootouts in 2022, which I think is going to be super well received and kind of a welcome addition to the NHRA offering. It's an exciting time for the sport of drag racing. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've got the green room packed full of human beings right now. So we will introduce our guests today. First and foremost, we actually were joined by this young man at the 2021 Performance Racing Industry Trade Show. Had a fantastic conversation as they made news about his team's alliance with Antron Brown, who is venturing out on his own in 2022 to field a Top Fuel team. After many years racing under the Don Schumacher Racing umbrella. It's a whole new world in the NHRA scene these days. And I'm excited to bring him onto the show, the one, the only, Justin Ashley. What's up, buddy?
Well, what's going on, guys? How's it going?
What's up?
Swinging and ducking, man. That's what I like to say. Swinging and ducking. And I want to, Mike and JT, I'm going to ditch you guys momentarily here. I apologize. I've gotten a little bit of feedback from my production team, and they're like, hey, we need more side by side. We need more of that. So we got to get more of this angle. So here we are, Justin. What's going on, man? What are you doing?
Not much, man. Just working every day, trying to put things together for the season, getting ready to go, right? The off season, it goes quick, man. So we're only a few weeks away from Arizona. Get testing going and underway. We're excited about it. How are you doing, Wes? Good?
Man, I am fantastic. If I was any better, I'd be you, buddy. And I am curious how this is a tight off season, right? I mean, it goes by really quick. What's the biggest challenge from like the end of the season to the next? Is it almost entirely with marketing partners, which is obviously going to be some of the topic of conversation today? Is it all about the marketing stuff, the sponsorships and branding and blah, 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 blah? Or is it getting ready with parts and pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of things. You know, for our team, we're very fortunate in that, you know, we have Dustin Davis and Davis Motorsports that handles everything to the day-to-day operations of the car, to the employees and the team that we have. So they're able to specifically focus on being in the shop and getting the car and team ready to go for the season. And then on my side, I'm able to focus on the marketing stuff because there is so much that goes into it just to be able to get ready to go to start the season over the course of just a few months. So, you know, it's been really busy on both sides, but certainly, as we'll talk about today on the marketing side of things, just working with our existing marketing partners, bringing on new marketing partners and welcoming them to the sport of NHRA drag racing. So it's been busy, but really just trying to, you know, establish a platform, you know, to be able to help our marketing partners get to where they want to get to throughout the season.
It's pretty amazing that drag racing can be part of that conversation, right? I think there have been times in the past where we felt like we didn't have, you know, as a sport, I say we, and I kind of speak on behalf of all of drag racing. It's like, oh man, where's corporate America? We need more big partners. We need more brands that see value here. But I mean, you're proof positive at this point in time that there are big companies, big brands that see value in not only NHRA drag racing, but drag racing in general. They recognize that this is a group of passionate fans, passionate people that will certainly support their cause if they support ours. What's that been like? And I tell you what, it may be a great time to bring on Amber. Let's do it. I think I can see her chomping at the bit here. Amber White with Phillips Connect, joining the Justin Ashley, Dustin Davis Motorsports program in 2022. Hi, Amber, thanks for joining us. I think we're trying to get Jim, maybe.
We're still trying to get him. He's at the airport right now, so we're trying to find some space to get in this crazy schedule.
Hey, customers. No worries whatsoever. And if it works out, fantastic. If not, we will sort it out in the future and bring him on here to talk all things old school funny car racing. But I'm just curious, like between the two of you, and Justin, I'll throw it to you first. When you made that announcement, Phillips Connect joining Justin Ashley's 2022 Top Fuel campaign, I mean, is it a little bit of a pinch me moment to get like a big brand, a big company to dive into drag racing and support your program?
Oh yeah, of course. You know, it's it really is exciting. It's very humbling to be able to work with a company like Phillips Connect. When you think about it from a driver perspective and from a team owner perspective, you know, you kind of want to be very careful with the brands that you associate yourself with, because you're a representative for that company, but you're also a representative for the sport of NHRA drag racing and your team. And that's what gets me so excited about working with Phillips Connect. Their parent company, Phillips Industries, has been around for 94 years, which to me, right, 94 years is a long time. So to me, that speaks volumes of the type of company they are, the way they treat the people, the way they treat their employees, and the types of products that they make. So just to be able to represent a big brand, a big company like that is very humbling. And, you know, we're all hoping that it's a start of a very long and successful relationship.
Amber, what's your take? I mean, obviously you have a history with the NHRA, and you certainly know the value that exists here and the platform that exists here. Kind of on behalf of Phillips, how excited are you guys? And what was the catalyst? How did this situation come to be?
Well, I tell Justin he's kind of got the dream team. He never had to sell us on NHRA and what the value is, because we know the time between runs and the hospitality and that opportunities for B2B within the sport. You've got Jim, who's been, the first to 300 miles per hour in a funny car. He's been a driver, he's been an owner, he's been a sponsor. So now to take my experience from being on the marketing side and running those pre-races, and even Wes, the experience we had working together on the Pro Mod series and J&A services and that side. And then also working on the social media side. So I know the ins and outs of NHRA. I know the benefits. We're being careful, and we're baby stepping with our CEO to show him the value. We're building tech trailers. So a lot of our industry, we've had trade shows, and trade shows aren't working during COVID. So we're taking the show to our customers now. So it's a very different way of marketing, and hopefully that it's going to show some success in our little test for the first 3 races.
I think it's fantastic. And it's interesting because, and you both have seen this in the world of drag racing, everybody's chasing sponsors, right? And you pretty much take whatever you get. Like, if the latest, greatest candy bar that's existed for 30 seconds comes along and wants to throw a little bit of money your way, who's doing the rap, right? I mean, we're getting it done. We're ordering crew jerseys. We're doing the whole bit because we're just so hungry for a little bit of support. So to your point earlier, a brand that's been around for a century, essentially, to be able to represent them and to see a brand like that come into our sport, I'm excited about. Like, don't get me wrong, I was excited when Slammer's Milk showed up, if you remember that, or whatever. And I'm excited every time something like that happens, the next energy drink or whatever. But to see a big influential brand like that, practice, kind of cast their vote with their wallet to support NHRA Top Fuel drag racing, NHRA drag racing, I hope that can serve as a catalyst. Not to say that I want to see like all your competitors, all of Phillips's. I'm not looking for Samsung and LG to roll out Top Fuel programs next year. But you know what? If they did, it wouldn't be a bad thing, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's, this movement is certainly healthy for the sport of NHRA drag racing. We know that. And just to kind of reiterate what Amber touched on, the great thing about working with Amber and Jim is their background in NHRA. They know the great platform that NHRA and our team are able to offer, and that goes a long way. And obviously it starts with being able to, have hospitality, right? And be able to bring clients out, just like a lot of other companies will have the ability to do as well when they get involved, and, bring their smart trailer technology out to the racetrack for these individuals, for these companies to be able to see firsthand what they're able to do. And, their products really speak for themselves. When you talk about smart trailer technology, you talk about, cameras in the back of trailers that look at the cargo inside. When you talk about GPS tracking, when you talk about on-demand pre-checks for different trailers, all this stuff that makes this company go, that it's the company that you want to get involved with. And, I do think that other companies out there, other big companies can look at this Phillips Connect program and realize, we can roll out a very similar program and it can be successful.
I believe it. And that's my hope, to be honest, is that I love to see these new brands come into our sport and cast this vote of confidence in this particular type of entertainment or this particular type of marketing program. Amber, you sent me a message in the chat a second ago talking about Jim Epler being the guy that basically brought trackside hospitality to drag racing. Can you talk a little bit more about just those opportunities that exist? And it's funny, you mentioned something that I think the entire drag racing world has always saw as a bit of a black eye or a hurdle to get over, and that is downtime, right? Mm-hmm. Time between runs or whatnot. But the way you phrased it seemed opportunistic, and I'd never really seen it phrased like that, because it's like, you know what? That's actually a fairly interesting perspective, because I don't know, like I think of Major League Baseball, the 7th inning stretch. I mean, that's like a thing. Maybe we need to invest or put a little more time and energy into building some excitement and enthusiasm around that time between runs, because it is truly unique to have that opportunity to engage a competitor, engage an athlete in the midst of their competition.
Right. Phillips Connect isn't about putting our name on the side of a car. It's the opportunity to bring the right customers to the track, show them the technology that's on Justin's trailer, show them the technology that's on Jim's custom tech trailer that we're building out. Justin knows that any opportunity within NHRA, we want to support anybody who has a large trucking fleet or needs this technology. We even have talked about investing into the motorhome side and watching TPMS and knowing what their tires are doing, knowing what's going on the cargo inside Justin's hauler. There's a lot of racers that would like to use this type of technology too. So whether we're working with Josh Hart with RNL or whatever opportunity, Justin is just our flagship for now, and not always for now, but we are building this program out with him and hopefully going into the future. But it's not about having Phillips Connect's name on the side of the car. It's about supporting our resellers. It's about supporting our customers and bringing the technology to them.
I'm curious, could you guys, the two of you, could you run through some of the, I mean, a lot of the people that listen to this show are over-the-road truck drivers, right? A lot of our podcast listeners, we hear all the time, like, hey, I had an overnight drive and you saved my life. You kept me awake rambling about drag racing. I'm curious, could you, run through some of the offerings and what that smart technology exists and what Phillips Connect really represents and what you guys are offering the transportation industry right now?
Sure. I think some of the biggest things we want to help a lot of the truck drivers are their CSA violations and safety. Brakes, lights, and tires are some of the biggest issues. And for now, well, in the past, it's been just a dumb box on wheels. And you don't know what's going on. And especially with all these movements moving into autonomous, and we're talking about all the future of electrical, we need to know what's going on behind that driver. If you don't know that your tire's 250 degrees and you're about to have a wheel off and cause an accident or something like that, there's a lot of danger going into that. And we could actually alert and give those warnings ahead of time. The other part of it is, you don't have downtime. We're getting those drivers home safely to their families and getting them back safe and getting them back sooner. You don't have to be broken down on the side of the road or in a TA stop for 2 to 3 days and to get the right part in place. We're going to let you know that trailer is safe before you even head out on the road.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, Justin, like anybody who's done the drag racing dance for any amount of time has likely had someone pull up alongside them on the highway and be like, hey, your trailer's on fire. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's the only way you learn about it, and until, you pull over and it's in shambles. So it's a fantastic thing. Or the always lovely showing up and your car has moved around and now needs repainted. Or 2 new doors and a wing and a parachute or whatever else it tore up bouncing around in the trailer. Having an opportunity to sell something that really, that really could make a difference in these people's lives and racers' lives. Justin, what's that mean to you? Because it's not like you're selling a pre-workout powder. It's not like you're selling, you're selling something that pretty much everybody in the pits, especially your pro and high-level sportsman competitors, they really can embrace and see a difference from. I mean, that's got to feel good.
Oh, it does feel good when you talk about these products, right? When you pull up to the racetrack, I mean, think about all the different rigs and the trucks and trailers that are there. It's like there's no other place that's going to have that many trucks and trailers in one spot, staying where they are for a few days at a time. And it's great to be able to, work with Phillips Connect and offer their products that are going to help those individuals, help large fleets, help companies, because what they do essentially is they save time, they save money, and they save lives. And at the end of the day, it's about ROI, right? That's what people want to see. So when you're able to show them, okay, you take some of these products, you put them on your trailer, and then, X amount of time down the road, you're actually going to be able to save money and make money by doing it. That's a good feeling, knowing that you're able to help people.
Absolutely, man. So curious, just looking forward to 2022, full slate of events. We're going to have, we had a multitude of sellouts in the NHRA world last year, big crowds. The two of you, just looking at the health and wellness of the sport of drag racing right now, we're taking part, Drag Illustrated is taking part in the SEMA Motorsports Parts Manufacturers Council, Motorsports Parts Manufacturers Conference. Yes, it took me a second. That's going on this week right now. It's a virtual event in 2022. Historically, it's taken place in Southern California. But one of the things that I continue to hear, business is up, car culture's growing. We don't know what's going on, but there's magic in the air. We're seeing growth like we haven't seen in a long, long time. considering that, and that there does seem to be a new renewed energy and enthusiasm around the automobile and around racing. I mean, you got Netflix rolling out these Formula One documentaries. You cannot watch Discovery Channel without having drag racing shoved down your throat. It's an interesting time. What do you guys make of the landscape right now? Amber, I'll ask you first. I mean, from a corporate perspective and having an NHRA background, I mean, things look pretty good out here.
Yeah, it's definitely, I took 2 years off from drag racing, and they say it's in your blood and it's a hard time. I've got married and had a baby, and I keep telling Justin and Jim, I'm not going on the road again. I love this sport. I love the people, and that's probably what I've missed the most. But to see the growth of what the TV show has done, what Camping World has brought to the sport, some of these other B2B opportunities within the sport, and all of how what I do now relates to what I did then. There's a lot of opportunities and a lot of growth and a lot of exposure that brings, as much as our company is a newer company within like the last 5 years, our parent company has been around forever and is on almost 100% of trucks and trailers nationwide. So to have that reputation that they have, to bring to Phillips Connect, and then to have NHRA as that platform to expose the world to this new company, that there's nothing but opportunities going into the future.
100%. Justin, what's your take on it? I mean, as someone who's been out here beating the brush, trying to sell sponsorships, trying to do this deal for a hot minute now, is the what's the word? Is the climate kind of headed in the right direction? Do you feel like it's resonating with people?
Oh, definitely. I mean, for me, all arrows are pointing up. When you look at the landscape of NHRA, there's so many things that you could focus on. But when you look at things like television, right? We have 22 races. 8 of the 22 races are on Fox Broadcast Network. Yeah. Those 8 races are following NFL lead-ins too, which is absolutely fantastic. And then something that I'm really looking forward to be honest with you, is the new NHRA video game that's going to be coming in. Talk about getting those video games into the hands of kids, Xbox, PlayStation, whatever it might be. That's going to help our brand. It's going to help NHRA as a sport grow to where we need it to get to. So I think that getting NHRA professionals, getting the sport into the mainstream media is really important. And I think that they're doing a really good job of bringing us to that point.
This video game, I've been beating that drum for about a decade now. It's a difference maker. It's 100% a difference maker. The opportunity to get racing in front of young folks by way of a video game. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that NBA 2K contributes to the success of the NBA, and Madden football contributes to the success of NFL. That's how you create fans. It really is. And in some instances, it's how you create participants, people that get introduced to it by way of a video game. The next thing you know, they're playing pickup basketball, and, then their kid goes on to play basketball. I mean, that is a very important thing. And I actually, here on this show a couple of months ago, Brian Loans, NHRA and Fox's own Brian Loans, showed us a couple, he probably got in trouble for it, but showed us a couple of screen grabs, I guess, if you will, of the game. And it looks legitimately badass. Like, I was concerned that it would be like haphazardly done. Like, oh, we got to get a video game. Click, let's find someone to do it so we can check that box and say that we have a video game. But I'm really excited to see that the NHRA apparently took this matter very seriously, partnered with a high-end game manufacturer, and from what I understand, we're about to have a really, really badass video game in our hands. So
yeah, I know behind the scenes, Mike Rao has been talking about that for about 5 years and pushing that forward. So
no, it's a good thing, and it's fun because, to be honest, I think I was speaking candidly, everybody loves to bag on the NHRA, right? It's like every drag racer's favorite pastime is to like beat up the man, right? However, there's a whole lot of stuff that they're doing really well. There's a whole lot of things that are headed in the right direction. And it's an exciting thing. And whenever the opportunity exists to give those guys in Glendora and Indianapolis the credit that they deserve, man, 70 years is no accident, right? I point to that all the time. I mean, you think about something that has stood and been as significant as it is for 70 years, right? The fact that pretty much everybody in the drag racing business compares themselves to the NHRA, how the NHRA does it. Well, that's not how the NHRA does it. I want you to do it how the NHRA does it. that speaks to what they've accomplished. And it's just great to see. I mean, I actually wrote that down, Justin. All arrows are pointing up, because I think that's just a great thing to hear from a Top Fuel racer, an active, competitive, race-winning, championship contending Top Fuel competitor, to hear you say, like, hey, man, I think things are trending the right direction. It feels like a victory for our entire sport.
It really does. I mean, look, nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? It's easy to sit here and bag out NHRA and say, oh, they could do this better, they could do that better. But I'll tell you one thing, I'd rather be in this position than be the person running NHRA right now. That much is for sure.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're doing a lot of really good things. You know, we have to think, you know, glass half full, not glass half empty. And I really like the trajectory and where the sport is going right now. And I think, you know, the most important thing is, and you see it right here with Amber and Jim, it's opening opportunities for major businesses to get involved, which is going to help take the sport to the next level.
So I'm curious, have you, I mean, it would have been, if we had Jim on here, I could have made it like, but I'm going to use this anyways. I already had it written down. I'm like, I want to ask this. Did you have like a strong knowledge of Jim Epler and what he's done in our sport and who he was prior to this whole relationship, Justin?
So I had a brief knowledge of who he was. As you can imagine, I knew he was Mr. 300, right? That I knew. I said, okay, he's the first guy to go 300 miles per hour in a funny car, which I thought was a really cool deal, obviously. But the part about him that I didn't know was how involved he was on the business side when he was racing. So I had no idea that he was one of the first people, if not the first person, to have a full hospitality program at the races. I didn't know that he was a team owner and he put most of, if not all, his business deals together. So I think throughout this process, that's been the most exciting part to me, because I really have a good appreciation for drivers who not only drive, which obviously takes a certain skill set, but are heavily involved in the business side of things too. And he was one of the first to incorporate the B2B programs, and look how far it's come now. So I've learned a lot just over these last few months.
Super far ahead of his time, I think. I think that, I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's only relatively recently that John Force Racing started offering hospitality, right? I mean, that was something that they resisted essentially for a long time. And I mean, kudos to them. They didn't necessarily have to do that. But I mean, that B2B opportunity that exists in NHRA drag racing is rather significant. And there's another one. I remember Jim Epler rolling out a WWF funny car, or like a WWE themed funny car. And I just, seeing somebody think that far outside of the box, those are the type of people I like to be around. You know, those are the type of people you want to spend time with. So I was just curious, because I do think the guy clearly has a track record of big ideas, going way beyond the norm, getting away from traditional auto parts manufacturers or whatever, and bringing outside companies. And I can't imagine that all that experience won't be extremely valuable to you as a young team owner and young driver, Justin.
It's very valuable, right? He's a guy that, another guy that can be a mentor to me, somebody that I can look up to, because he's had success in the sport on the racetrack. He's had success in the sport off the racetrack. And just to be able to have a guy like that in my corner is really great. And it's a privilege, to be honest with you. He, Amber, Rob Phillips, the CEO of Phillips Connect, they're all going to be involved in actually implementing and running this program. And I think that's the great part about it. It's not like, what Amber was saying, we're just going to stick Phillips Connect on the side of the race car and we'll figure it out as we go along.
Right.
That's not the way it's going to happen. It's okay. Phillips Connect is going to be on the side of the race car, but here's the business program that we're going to be able to implement around it. So it's successful for Phillips Connect. So it's successful for Justin National Racing and Davis Motorsports. So that's the great part. And Amber and Jim's background in NHRA is so critical in that. And it's just so exciting to work with people in a company like that have a plan and are really excited to implement it.
Well, and I also want to add the opposite side. Jim took a lot of what he learned from the racing side and implemented it in the business. Wow. How he develops our products is based on quick installs and team mentality. And he actually is one of the ones that engineers most of our products, our sensors, everything that happens. He's the one that kind of takes these concepts and ideas and develops it into Phillips Connect products. Jim also, everything that we do, he calls it a pit stop. So we have a pit stop install. So instead of being up on a ladder or doing certain things, it's fast, it's easy, click here, plug it in, and it's based off of the Phillips harnessing and wiring, all based off of his knowledge of NHRA and how he puts a team together to make everything successful.
That always makes me excited. And we sometimes hear that from people like at General Motors or Ford or Dodge about how valuable racing is as a test bed. And you learn about efficiency. You learn about not allowing things to fail, that you can't, that reliability is as important a feature as anything else. I mean, you really can learn a lot from the racing life. And it's cool to hear that other side of the coin, Amber. I'm glad you shared that, because I don't know that there's a lot of people that would believe that you can learn about your business or how to apply the situations that exist at the track to your daily life. It's kind of a cool notion. Speaking of daily lives, I thought you've done a fantastic job. We touched on this at PRI, Justin, just kind of opening up on social media. I think we've seen you really start to come out of your shell, you alongside are calling Antron a teammate, kind of quasi teammate, a lion racer.
Teammate.
Okay, teammate. Antron Brown, both of you really putting yourselves out there, coming out of your shell. How much has that been an enjoyable experience? I mean, what's that kind of developing a deeper connection with your fan base? Have you enjoyed that? I know it can be a challenge at times.
Yeah, it can be a challenge, but it's fun, right? I think the most fun part about being involved in social media is not necessarily sharing what's going on, but is the engagement that you get with the fans, right? Because constantly you'll put up a post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the responses that you get, where it's like, hey, I saw you in Atlanta and, you saw my kid there and you put him in the car, you took a picture and he's still talking about it today. That's the part of social media that I love, is being able to realize, here I am. I have, the best job in the world. I'm fortunate and lucky to be able to do it. Not everybody gets a chance to do it. And the actual impact that we're able to have on people by just driving a race car, right? It's pretty amazing. And to be able to engage with the fans and show them what's going on in my life is really a privilege to be able to share that with them. But their responses, more so than anything else, is what keeps me going, what keeps me motivated.
I think it's weird because that 6 degrees of separation, you kind of encounter that on Facebook. It's like or on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. It's a big world. Don't get me wrong, but it can be pretty small. I mean, I'm always surprised whenever I bump into somebody at the races or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, you tagged me in a post," or we talked on Facebook, or you replied to my DM on Instagram, and it's like, man, you know what? For there's no doubt that there's some bad that comes from all those things, but there is a whole lot of good and a whole lot of connection that has been created by that. And being able to connect with fans on that level from your phone, from the comfort of your own home while you're on the road or at an airport, it's pretty amazing. Amber, from the corporate perspective and your history with NHRA, I mean, I've seen you trying to get people to do interviews and push drivers like, hey, you got to do this. We need you to do this. Two questions. First and foremost, how valuable is that content? I mean, we hear that word all the time. It's like the buzzword of 2021, 22, content. For a company that's trying to fill all those buckets and be visible in a lot of places, how helpful is it when you have a partner, someone that you're working with like Justin that's creating content? How helpful is that for you guys as a company? And then how glad are you to see NHRA stars kind of finally starting to break through that wall, put themselves out there and be celebrity athletes?
I've been on the opposite side with NHRA and working with Nikki on the social media, and I know the value of it. About a year ago, I tested our social media with Jim's 300-mile-an-hour run and posted on the Phillips Connect page just to kind of give that look at what this exposure that NHRA and the social media following and how to grow our company. And that was kind of my simple use case to get into NHRA. And now it's this 3-race test with Justin. We have to be very careful on what we're doing with our money within Phillips Connect and how we're using it, especially because we take pride in our employees and we do profit sharing and we take care of the team here and what we're going to do to, all the money that's coming from NHRA, there's a portion that's going back into Justin's race team and what we're going to develop and what we're going to do for other teams out there. The presence that he has on social media and the team that he built with Natalie Torrance and Elon Werner and the amazing PR opportunities that we have with his team is unmatched. So I'm really proud to be a part of Justin's team and also what NHRA is doing.
Do you feel like, are you seeing more people? I mean, I feel like I'm noticing that Ron Capps all of a sudden is pretty damn active on social. Antron Brown is all of a sudden pretty active on social media. Justin, and I mean, to name a few, there does seem to be a movement that direction. Are you glad to see racers embrace that? Because I do think that it's a necessary thing that hasn't been treated as a necessary thing until recently.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started at NHRA, we had a lot of traditional marketing, and now so much has moved to the digital marketing. You actually see results, you see numbers behind what you're doing. You're getting new followers, you're getting new people to be able to expose a different way where you wouldn't before. So, working with Phillips and this older company that was used to sending print mail and flyers and everything else, and bringing up and saying, now look at this digital advertising and look at what these event marketing and bringing the show to people versus expecting them to come to a trade show. There's a lot of changes that are happening over this COVID era. So
there's no doubt. And I think it has, as much as it has been obviously very trying times for people around the world, there is no doubt. And I don't ever mean to make light of it. I do think that we have learned a lot. I know, like, as a business owner, as a human being, as a father, a husband, a friend, I mean, you learn a lot through this environment we've been in the last couple of years, ways to be more efficient, ways to prioritizing things. It's been as tough as it has been. I definitely think there has been some bright spots, and hearing companies, big companies, recognize that they can't just do things the way they've always done them. I mean, I think those are some of the most dangerous words in the English language, because that's how we've always done it. That's a scary mindset, but it has existed for a long time. And I think COVID kind of forced everybody to adjust course. So it's been as bad as it has been, and tragic as it has been. There definitely been some silver linings to these clouds, guys. Let's talk real quick, just 2022, the first race of this relationship, obviously the Phoenix test session, but the Winter Nationals, it's only a few weeks away, which is, it's kind of stunning that it's upon us already. How excited are you to get the season started, and how important is it for you, Justin, to start fast, right? I mean, with the countdown and the way the NHRA schedule works, there seems to be kind of like a focus on just being ready for the countdown. But how important is it for you, especially with these partners, to go out and get started on the right foot, be successful early?
Oh, it's critical. I mean, when you look at the Top Fuel field this year and what it's going to entail, and I know that there's still a few announcements to come out and even more cars are going to come out and race, it's going to be a fight. Every single race, there's going to be a tremendous amount of cars that are going to be able to go there and win races. And, we look at the countdown and 10 people make the countdown. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be way more than 10 cars that are going to be countdown capable. So we have to, starting in Pomona, begin to stack points right away, immediately, and be able to get some momentum going forward, to establish throughout the year. So, I mean, it's really important. It's going to be the first race we're going to roll out our new hospitality program with Phillips Connect and all of our great marketing partners. So we have a lot going on, and the guys at the shop, man, they've been working so hard throughout the off season. Like we said earlier, it's such a tight time frame. And, they've been in there day in and day out. Mike Green, Tommy DeLago, Dustin Davis, and the guys. So they're getting the car ready to go. We're getting the marketing ready to go, and now's the time to really see it come all to fruition. And we got to start fast and finish strong, and that's our goal this year.
Amber, before we let you go, and I appreciate your time. I know you're kind of filling in for us here today, and please send our best to Jim. And I would love to arrange for him to come join us at some point in the future, and we can bench race for a little while. But how excited are you for this first one? I'm assuming you will go. I
will be there. I'll be there the first 3 races.
Okay. So
I've agreed to get this test program up and running and make sure that it's the right way we want to do it. I'm excited to get it started. I've given Jim more of a passion to get back into it again. It's giving him more of a passion to get out there and sail. We've always had a really long sales cycle. It takes a year to get. I mean, we have 5 of the biggest transportation companies in the world under our belt right now.
Wow.
And to take those and shorten the sales cycle by bringing it to NHRA, that's our goal. And Jim just has this renewed passion for the sport and for the company, and I think it's only going to be good coming out of it. And kicking off Pomona in our backyard, where Phillips Industries, our parent company, is in Santa Fe Springs. So that's only, a half hour from the track. our corporate office is here in Irvine, California. So, Pomona's our home track.
Yeah.
So
hometown crowd.
Get out there and show it off to our staff and show it off to our partners and customers, and just, it's going to be a good event.
I tell you what, and I've said this to people many, many times, like the drag strip is a great selling environment. I mean, it may not be fantastic, like if you just have everybody packed in the staging lanes or whatever, and it's 600 degrees, but you start talking about being at, the Fairplex, being at a cool historic event like that, and the vibe that exists at the races, especially early on with all that optimism and excitement. Nothing's gone wrong yet. First race of the year. Everybody's excited. I hope it's a big business weekend for you guys, Amber. And thank you for your time. Seriously, very much. I appreciate it. Thanks to Phillips Connect for supporting the sport of drag racing. It's not lost on us, and we'll do our part to support you guys. Justin, can I get you to stay for 5 more minutes?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Amber. We'll talk soon.
Thanks,
okay.
Wes. Bye.
Take care. I'm going to move her. I'm running the 1s and 2s over here. Wicka, right. JT. Well, last question for you, Justin. And I just wanted to talk a little bit of racing. Yeah. How just specifically about something that I think we've seen the last couple of years. First, it was moving to 1,000 feet. It made the starting line much more significant. All of a sudden, you saw more and more and more pressure being put on drivers to cut a light. Last year, I don't know if everybody was just unconscious, if everybody was just eating their Wheaties. I'm not sure. I think you personally had something to do with it. The expectation of drivers in fuel racing has changed. It really has. I bet your dad could speak on this without question, that it wasn't that long ago that, hey man, if you go out there and go like 60, 70, you're winning. If your shit's fast, you're going to win. You know what I mean? Whereas, I think guys like Tony Schumacher, 45 to 70, and he's a 9-time champion or whatever, right? Now, granted, he got a hot rod, significantly fast race car with a competitive advantage over the field with Alan Johnson standing behind him. But I'm just curious what's that like at this point? Did you notice, didn't you feel things ratchet up a level last year?
There's a huge difference.
Right?
100%. I noticed it. There's a huge difference. So when you go back and you think back to 10, 20 years ago, right, it was all these cars going out, and there was such a difference in the elapsed time and the speed that they were running. So the difference on the starting line was not as significant. As long as you were in a certain window, right, chances are you were going to be okay. But now, especially last year, you've seen guys step up and they are just unconscious on the starting line. And every little bit that you can get on the starting line now makes a difference. And with the kind of competitors that we have, there is no room to let up. Whether it's the first round, second round, semifinals, or finals, you always have to be on your A game. And right now we're in a position where everybody's bunched so close together that it really makes that big of a difference. And as a driver, you feel that pressure and you understand that you need to be prepared every time you go up there. And I think most of us love it. We enjoy it because that's why we want to do it. We want to help our team. We want to be successful.
I have 2 thoughts on it that I think I'd like to share, I guess. First and foremost, I do think that there was that youth movement. You start getting guys, and not like super young, but you get these guys that have bracket racing backgrounds, sportsman racing backgrounds. I'm talking specifically right now about guys like Sean Langdon, who develop a reputation for being a good lever. Then you just get some young blood in the sport, guys such as yourself that are just athletic, able-bodied people, and you see things start to intensify. But something happened last year where the pressure got. I think about guys like Mike Salinas, and I've often wondered if it's good or bad, because we talk about this in pro mod racing, which is something I hope is near and dear to your heart with your dad's history of door slammer drag racing. But whenever they were talking this last year, and they did initially switch from automatic shifters to manually shifting. Right. And the thing that I was hearing from throughout the industry is this shit's hard, that not all the rich guys that can afford to go pro mod racing can do this. Right? It's hard to do. We've got to put automatic shifters back in them because we're going to lose cars because people can't do it. And then I look at Top Fuel, and it's kind of similar because, a relatively healthy middle-aged guy that's got some money or got some corporate ties and can get some budget wrestled away to go fuel racing, he's screwed. You know what I mean? Like those kind of, and I don't say this in like a negative connotation, but the hobby racer type, you're done. There's no chance that you're going to, get lucky because there's just too many killers out here at this point.
No, you're right. Look, if you want to be a hobby racer and you have the money to do it, there's no doubt about it, right? You can come out and compete. But at this level, with the stage we're in right now, with Top Fuel, with Funny Car, it's extraordinarily difficult to be successful. There is a lot of talent and skill that goes into it at this point. Obviously, a lot of it's on the starting line, and a lot of it's just in your ability to drive, right? There are so many things that happen in that 3.7 seconds that you have to be prepared for and you have to be ready for. So sure, as a hobby racer, you can come out there and race and
do
it.
Great.
It's great, right? We want more sports for the sport.
100%.
To be successful, it takes a whole nother element, right? It obviously starts and ends with the people that you have and the team that you have. But as a driver, man, it is just getting tougher and tougher out there to be able to go out there and compete and win rounds.
I mean, you see the people that are like some of these whole shot losses from last season. I'm going, and the heartbreak on the faces of some of these people, and it becoming more of a storyline. I found interesting. Like late in the season, Brittany Force, it was like a established thing. She was struggling, right? People were talking about it. It was existing in the news, and I found myself going, man, I don't know that drag racers of yesteryear really had to deal with that kind of pressure, because whole shot, I mean, it was kind of hit and miss. You know what I mean? Like those moments just didn't happen as frequently, and it wasn't as much a part of the conversation over the course of time. Whereas now, I mean, holy crap. I mean, there's whole shot win after whole shot win after whole shot win. Every time you pull up Drag Race Central to check the results, I mean, you've got to be unconscious. I hate to keep using that word, but these people, you don't see 10 lights in fuel racing. That's never been the case, but now it's quickly becoming the case. Where do you look for reaction time at this point in time? Justin, are you working on yourself or are you working on the car?
Yeah, I think you can work, you can find it in different places. I think it starts and ends with the driver, right? Cars react differently. So some stuff that you might see from some drivers might not necessarily be them if they're slow, just like it might not necessarily be all them if they're fast. It's a combination of driver and car. For me, I'll always take the responsibility of myself. And Mike Green gives me a fast reacting race car, and he gives me a fast and quick race car to go down the racetrack. But I have to do my job to put ourselves in a position to win. And, you talk about how close these races are. And, last year in Bristol, I cut a 0.74 and I won on a whole shot. I went to Pomona, I cut a 0.55 and I lost on a whole shot. So it's like, you just don't know. That's why you always have to be on your A game. And it's a combination of things. It's a combination of driver. It's a combination of team and car and crew chief. But from a driver's perspective, the best guys are the ones who are the most consistent. The guys who stay within a small window so you know what you're going to get every time.
Do you think that there's a chance that it could actually, I mean, we've talked about this a lot over the years, just here on this show and on the pages of Drag Illustrated magazine and on dragillustrated.com, that we've worried at different times that, the hired gun driver was kind of going away. Most of the people that were out competing at the highest levels of drag racing were guys that were independently wealthy, or like we talked a moment ago, have corporate ties or have a business that would support their racing endeavors. And it's funny because I just wonder if the door is being opened, like the level of competition that exists in Top Fuel and Funny Car and what is required of drivers today. I don't know that you can be like on a conference call with China running your company and then go beat Justin Ashley in the final. I don't think you can do that. So I wonder if that opens the door for more hired gun drivers, or if we'll see some of the people, maybe there's some opportunities that will be created because it isn't something that you can just spend a bunch of money, buy good equipment, and be out there being the thick of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think you might see that movement, especially because it's getting more competitive. There might be teams out there that have the well-established funding behind them, right? And they figure, okay, let's just bring in a hired gun, and he'll be able to go out and not have to worry about anything else and be able to drive, which is great if you have the ability to do that. Me personally, I happen to enjoy the business side of things, right? I have a real estate business in New York. I really enjoy the business side of racing and working with our partners and working with our sponsors too. So that's always going to be involved in it as well. And I think it's healthy to be that way. But you'll see guys that'll come out there and like you said, be hired guns and come out there and, have nothing else to worry about and absolutely just race like there's nothing to lose and let it rip.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things and that's what I honestly think that's what we need, right? Because there are tons of, I think about guys that are running these $1 million bracket races and these big payout bracket racers. There's some incredible talent that exists in our sport. Tons of it, super talented drivers, but that, the dream of going fuel racing or going to the big show was kind of, the barrier to entry was so high because it wasn't really about your ability. It was about your budget.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it does seem that headed into 2022, there's a newfound onus on your ability, like, because you can't outspend an 010 or a guy that goes 035 all the time. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing you can do to contend with that. So hopefully this is a situation that benefits the sport of drag racing in the future. Last question, and we had this Corey Mahalik, longtime viewer of the show, great young man that's doing awesome things in Top Alcohol Dragster. He asked, what do you think, your ascension to fuel racing, how did the Top Alcohol Dragster experience kind of set you up for this? Do you look at anything back there that any experiences that have benefited you today, or do you feel like you were kind of getting set up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything. First of all, I love Corey. He is the best, great representative and
yes,
a great person to have in drag racing and a great driver. But it's actually a great question. I think that maybe there's nothing that can really set you up the right way for Top Fuel other than making laps. But if there's anything that's going to put you in a position to do that, it's racing Top Alcohol Dragster. Obviously, there's little intricacies inside the car that are going to be different, but for the most part, everything's really the same in terms of procedures that you do in the race car. So it just happens maybe, the margin for error is a little bit wider in a Top Alcohol Dragster, or things happen a little bit slower relative to a Top Fuel car. So it's excellent preparation for racing in Top Fuel. And just the more laps, that's what I would recommend for anybody. The more laps you can make in a Top Alcohol Dragster, the more you can experience different things and feel different things and apply it to Top Fuel. And I know that it really was a big stepping stone and a big help for me.
It's awesome, man. Well, hey, Justin, I truly appreciate the time. Thank you so much. We're excited for you. We're happy for you. And we can't wait to see what happens next. And I suppose we'll see you in a couple of weeks, which is weird to say out loud.
It is, right? But we'll see you in Pomona. Thanks for everything, Wes.
Hey, no problem, man. Thank you. Stay out of trouble, all right?
Yeah, I'll try. Thanks.
Thank you. Man, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to remind you guys real quick that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing products, from fire suits and gloves to drag chutes and seatbelts and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com. Make sure you tell Tommy and the gang that we sent you. Man, what a deal. JT, Mike, let's bring the squad back here. I'll do it. I'll click the buttons. Don't worry, JT. I got it. I don't want to bother you.
I was ready to go.
No, I know. I'm just playing.
Don't double step that damn button.
Oh, I know. JT gets super pissy about it too.
I do. Well, you're gonna pull back a stub one of these days.
Man, that's really cool. I wish we would have been able to connect with Jim Epler, and I do hope that we get to do that in the future, because I was ready to pick that man's brain. I was ready to ask some questions about marketing, what the value that he sees in drag racing.
Man, the WWE cars, dude, like that was the height for me, because when those cars hit NHRA, that was the height of WWF at the time. And I was huge into wrestling at that time, like every other 16-year-old boy was at that time, right? I mean, it was the deal. And to see that crossover into drag racing was just like, I remember showing, like, I had the hero cards and I'd like take them to school, and I'm like, look at this, wrestling is in drag racing. Yeah, I mean, I was super proud of it. And I actually was doing some research on Jim Epler while you were interviewing those Justin and Amanda. Is it Amanda? I'm sorry. Amber. Yes. Anyway, while you were interviewing them, I saw Jim actually ran a desktop publishing company. That's how he got started. Desktop publishing and Mac computer retail sales. So kind of in our world. I mean,
this guy speaks our language.
Back in the 80s and 90s, he started with that. So he's done it all. And he's actually, like you said, or Justin said, engineering a lot of the components for this Phillips Connect deal. So really cool to see someone with that kind of knowledge and expertise dip his toe into drag racing. And when he was in drag racing, I feel like we didn't know about all this stuff.
No, I know that I certainly didn't. I mean, I knew him for like 300 miles an hour, 1993, Heartland Park, Topeka, right? I mean, that was a legendary moment. I think not the whole world, but like the racing community was waiting for it to be John Force. You know what I mean? Like, John Force is going to make history. He'll be the guy, he's winning. He's the name. And it was kind of cool that Jim Epler, was the guy who was able to actually get it done. I was hoping we'd get to talk to him, but the WWE cars, like, what was there? One that was Kane themed.
They had
I think
quite a few.
a rock themed one.
Yeah. Stone Cold.
Yeah, there was a Stone Cold car. What were the other ones?
I'm pretty sure Undertaker had one too.
I think there may have been an Undertaker. We need more of those crossover deals, in my opinion. Like whenever, that's when I wish the NHRA had some relationships with sponsors that were dabbling in other motorsports, because I love that crossover or whatever, cross-pollination, when you try to bring some of your, I remember when what was the company? I can't think of the company. There was a company deeply involved with pro bull riding that got involved with NHRA at one point in time by way, I think it was Monster Energy Drink.
Yeah, I was going to say it had to be Monster.
Yeah, Monster Energy Drink. And it was just cool because it seemed like every NHRA national event, there'd be like some cowboy there that's like a famous Brazilian bull rider. And, you just know that he brought a few people with him as far as just like buzz on the, on the internet or whatever, people that recognized him. And then the Professional Bull Riding Association, they were always inviting guests from the NHRA. And I love when those type of things happen. I think it's good for everybody. It's like a long play. I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference overnight, but over the course of time, it will really, really, really.
Who had Taylor Swift on their car there a couple years ago?
Brittany
Courtney
Force.
Courtney Force did. Yeah. Monday Morning Racer said Jim was also over Saturn Motorsports, which if you read his bio and everything in there, that was an NHRA deal too, right?
Well, that was like, I think that they were going to be a part of the NHRA Sport Compact Series, right? Which is a weird thing too, to think about that doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Those were the days, early 2000s.
Look at this, JT Motorsports. That's a great name.
Yeah, that is a great name.
Yeah, trademark that deal.
Well, don't you think too that, I don't know, I just wonder, pointing to, and I don't mean to always spin this back to like television stuff, but the Fast and the Furious movie franchise basically created so much momentum and so much talk and energy, or whatever you want to call it, that the NHRA created a sport compact racing series, right? So I do think that as a sport, we can't downplay what can come from Street Outlaws, what can come from No Prep Kings, right? I mean, and then one has to answer, does history repeat itself? I mean, how many years into the future are we going to see a more, I don't want to use the word organized necessarily, because No Prep Kings events are organized, but are we ever going to see a NHRA of no prep style racing? I'm just curious. Do you think is that day going to come where it becomes something, a touring series, a championships points fund, big money, whatever else? Do you think that happens?
I don't think so. I really don't. I really think NHRA, from these other things we've seen, sport compact, trucks, they kind of know their lane. I really feel like
I hope so.
They know what they're good at. They know what they do better than anyone else, and they're fine with growing within those lanes. And I think they leave the other stuff to everyone else.
I mean, but they have tried, right? I mean, the Sport Compact series comes to mind. Do you remember NHRA Unleashed?
Yeah.
Right. When they tried their hand at like small tire racing, and they tried their hand at outlaw kind of drag racing. I just think that's interesting, because it feels like it will require some, I mean, I think they're going to have to make a conscious decision. Like, nope, we're going to stay away. We're going to leave it alone. Because I don't think it would work.
It's a temptation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
they had no prep a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
Or 2-3 years ago.
Well, they brought him in as like they brought him in
exhibition deal.
Yeah, as an exhibition.
That's what I mean, though. But like they entertained the thought and then nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a one and done type of deal that really wasn't. It was more that I think was more of a make good for pissing off that whole world.
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
We talked
like
about
that was
with Boosted. Remember talking about the deal, the whole story he had about dropping dirt on the track and all that stuff. So he kind of said that same thing.
No, I just think it's kind of an interesting thing, and I'm just wondering if there will be, drag radial racing, right, is an interesting thing as well. I mean, we saw Donald Long put Radial versus the world on the map, right? He planted that flag, turned it into a marquee attraction by promoting the hell out of it, paying big money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody jumps on that bandwagon. The next thing you know, there's RVW races all over, as we said earlier in the show. At one point, I think there were more than 20 scheduled in a single season. 20 different places, 20 plus, that you could go race for reasonable money, right? With a Radial versus the world car. Will that kind of the opportunistic capitalist nature of drag racing grab a hold of this and like try to take it? You know what I mean? Like, will we see organized, big money, highly publicized, highly promoted, no prep events pop up off this. You know what I mean? I mean, we've seen it a little bit, right? I mean, you see it at little 8th mile drag strips, and you see airport events.
And I feel like it's in a good spot right now. I don't think I'd want to see it go that direction. I think that would dilute it and splinter it. I kind of like what we've got going on right now. We're in a good spot with all these series, I feel like.
I agree, man. I really do.
Hey,
I really do.
Corey Mahalik, he says, huge into wrestling at that time. Don't downplay your current fandom. Hey, I don't know how much you guys know about wrestling, but that deal peaked in like late 90s, early 2000s. Everybody watched it. I went not even, it's not a thing anymore. But
I don't think it's definitely not what it once was. It was like a cultural
phenomenon at that time. And so I don't know. I'm not into it now.
I'm not into it either. Yeah. Like, and I
have a friend that still thinks it's real. I'm not kidding you, man. Like, he's so into it still, like.
No, man, they lost me. It's they lost me. I think that there is still a huge following. Obviously, it's like $1 billion.
Like, bullshit, it isn't a thing now. Like, yeah, it's still.
I mean, it's definitely still a thing, but it took over mainstream culture in the late 90s.
You're gonna get a stone cold stunner from somebody at the track, Mike.
But I mean, it's true. Like, you would literally go to church and see someone wearing an Austin 316 shirt. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was everywhere. Yeah,
Mike's gonna walk down pit lane, just get clotheslined by somebody.
People were going to McDonald's and like ordering 2 drinks just so they could smash them together and pour them all over their face. You know what I mean? Like, McDonald's. I don't know, just anywhere, right? But no, I just think it's really interesting that it's not what it's. I don't know. It lost me somewhere.
You know what they lost?
Characters.
Mike seems to be close to my age. Yep, probably so. They lost stars. They lost the characters. Yeah, they lost The Rock, Stone Cold, all the people that built that deal. And
they had guys that like kind of worked, but never really broke through necessarily.
When Chris Jericho and stuff became like the champion and like their leader, I was like, I'm out on this deal.
Yeah, Chris Jericho. You know what? Chris Jericho never resonated.
I did not. I was not a Chris Jericho.
I was never a Chris Jericho.
That was Y2J.
Yeah. Y2J. Yeah.
The rated R superstar. No, that was Edge. Edge was the rated R.
Wasn't huge on him either.
I wasn't huge on Edge either. Scott Malpass says in the comments here, can't call my dad on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday because of wrestling. Kevin Stevenson makes a good point too, that there was a big push to go PG, to make it more kid friendly and all that, and pull back on the hell raising attitude era or whatever. Look at me like dropping wrestling terminology here. Yeah. The attitude era, right? That was a real thing.
NWO, that was the biggest moment in wrestling, was the NWO deal. Hulk Hogan crossing over to that deal. That was Goldberg, your buddy JT.
My buddy JT's Goldberg.
JT's personal friends with Goldberg.
Yep.
Can you hit him up? I need a favor next Thursday night.
Okay.
Shoot him a text.
Okay.
And it is interesting because I suppose to some extent there have been many sports that have suffered some of the same consequences or some of the suffered from the same situations that drag racing has, right? I mean, we've seen it the last several years. NHRA's, always trying to bring out Shirley Muldowney or bring out Warren Johnson or bring back these stars from yesteryear. But I guess that's not a completely unusual situation, right? Those are the guys and gals that built the fan base. You got to lean on them as often as you can. You got to wring every little bit of juice out of those people that you possibly can.
Yep.
It is. It's fun to talk about. WCW versus WWE was the highlight of wrestling. It's true.
That was.
And you know what? He makes a great point. IHRA versus NHRA. Now the competition is gone and it's not the same. Man,
WCW was so IHRA and then WWE was NHRA. And you really kind of had to feel like which one you gravitated toward. WCW was big time for a while, especially here in the South. In the South, it kind of originated here in the South with Turner, Atlanta area. I mean, it was huge.
It really was.
I would say that when we first started watching it, especially here in this area, WCW was bigger than WWE.
Could it be argued that the most important thing that could happen to the sport of drag racing in the next few years is NHRA experience some competition?
I think they are.
I do.
I think they are. I mean, I really do.
I think that they won't feel competition from Street Outlaws or No Prep Kings, because you got to admit that there's some they're allowing NHRA sanctions so many of these tracks. They own tracks, right? So I think that it will be interesting to see, like, until they like stop them from bringing the No Prep Kings show to a track, they don't feel threatened or anything. But I think what they're gonna need to see is someone like Justin Ashley, right, choose that racing over Top Fuel.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're going to need to see someone
they don't
leave.
have competition in is maybe their top, tier, like I'd say Pro Mod, they definitely have competition.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I think if somebody starts to add some other classes, to compete with those classes, and it could very well happen.
I find it interesting because I think that's like the next, and I know I get wrapped up in like the proverbial next level. And I know there are plenty of people that are very content with where everything is currently and what's going on right now. But like, I think sometimes that competition, that may be what is needed to see our sport as a whole kind of level up. I think Andy Nearing in the comments here, the NHRA being a nonprofit organization, I think also is part of the problem. If making more money and making a bunch of money was more of, you know what I mean? Like if that was more of the strategy, I think we would see maybe a more aggressive approach right now. I don't know. It's fun to talk about because if I look back on some of the heady times that have existed in the sport of drag racing, it's been when the IHRA was rocking and rolling, NHRA is rocking and rolling. Matter of fact, I mean, I remember the NHRA, doing their damnedest to like shut down ADRL, right? Mm-hmm. Because the ADRL was putting some pressure on them, and I don't know. We need
the whole
more
ASO sanctioning thing. I think ADRL had a hard time getting that ASO approval, and there was always some drama surrounding that. I don't know all the details, but yeah, you're right.
Drama in the ADRL?
Ooh, really? Who would have thought? Hey,
can't imagine.
What do you think is the closest pressure or competitor that NHRA has on the fuel level? Do you think it's like a funny car chaos? Do you think that maybe the threat of someone that could go be a big fish in a smaller pond and go build a car for funny car chaos versus going to be a small fish in a big pond?
That's where I don't think they have the competition per se.
Is in the fuel racing ranks in nitro.
Right. But what's the closest thing that they have to it is what I'm saying. Is it like the funny car chaos deal? Is it like the fuel altered situation? I mean, is that probably really the only thing that's pushing that at all?
Probably. And, I think that there's a lot of layers to this onion. First and foremost, people forget how many people actually show up at these NHRA races. I mean, there's a lot of people that go to them, and it's easy I've seen it 10,000 times. Like, oh, they had more people than they had at the Gators. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Nobody that goes, no, they did not. I don't care how crowded. Yeah,
at the Gators in 2019. Oh my God, dude, that place was packed.
It's almost scary.
You have to double check with Brett Kepner, but I'm almost 100% positive in saying this correctly that Gainesville has the most fan seating capacity of any NHRA track on tour.
And yes, that is correct, I believe.
Yeah, and it was packed. Like, you couldn't even get a seat.
You couldn't get a seat. I mean, it was standing room only. And I think sometimes, like, I'll hear people say, like, "Oh, I was at so and so race, and they had more people." Yeah, they had more people than the NHRA has ever dreamed of. It's like, no, they didn't.
Stands aren't,
But if it felt that way to you as a fan, they succeeded. That's how it should feel. Whether you're going to on a Saturday night, Quick 8 or Gainesville, it should feel like, holy shit, this place is packed. There's energy, there's buzz, there's excitement. So if someone told you that, kudos to whoever put on that event.
And I think it's just going to take, the fanfare and the organization. I really think, and then the next thing, the problem is the NHRA does bring like their value proposition or whatever. I mean, it's pretty significant. Like, hey, we've got a safety safari. The tracks are we race at nice tracks. We race at reasonable hours. We run a tight ship. We've got an official schedule that we kind of live and die by. I think that there's just so many things that they do right that it's tough for anybody to come in and compete with them. And especially just the way of the world, expectations are always so high. You know, I mean, we actually have suffered from this at different times where it's like, hey man, remember, like, this is the first time we've ever done this, or like, you know, but everybody measures you against people that have been doing it for 70 years, like the NHRA. So I think that it's going to take a group of people that want to be a catalyst or want to create change. Like, it's going to take a group of people from the NHRA saying, hey, we understand this isn't going to happen overnight. We're going to have to go over here and we're going to run this series, or we're going to put this deal together, and it's going to take time, because it won't, in my opinion, happen overnight. But I do think the quicker something like that happens, the better, because the moment NHRA is, you know, feels pressure to increase purses, feels pressure to develop deeper relationships with their racers, right? Feels pressure to provide more value to their sponsors and their partners, whatever. Until that exists, I think we're just kind of it's their world. We're just living in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have any competition, and I'm anxious.
Which goes back to what we talked about earlier in the show. You know, competition is good for business. You know,
yep.
When I had a bar, it was the only bar in town, but you know, at one point there was 2 bars in town, and business was better when there was 2 bars in town, because more people would go out, you know, into that town, you know, and they could go back and forth from bar to bar.
Yeah,
and you felt competition.
Yeah,
you were better than that.
You
other
step
bar.
up your game. You weren't just you know, flubbing it
it's
off.
Tough
and like,
because,
oh,
I mean,
Saturday night, like, no, I'm gonna have a band tonight. You know, I'm gonna have karaoke or whatever.
I see a comment here from Drag Racing Central. Unless PDRA adds nitro classes, NHRA is fine. But I would argue that, I mean, there's a couple of examples that really speak to the contrary. I mean, it's like Mountain Motor Pro Stock, right? I mean, you've got PDRA Extreme Pro Stock, pays good money. I understand it's not making anybody rich, but I mean, it's a competitive thing. There's a lot of good cars there. There's a championship point series. There's a banquet at the end of the year. They race at first class tracks. They have a safety team. I mean, they do so many things right, but you have a pocket of racers that were willing to like spend their own money and race for nothing just to go race at NHRA. Right. I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, there is an entire group of Mountain Motor Pro Stock racers that were literally willing to pay to race and race for no purse just to go be at an NHRA national event.
Compare that crowd with those people. Yeah, in the staging lanes. Yeah.
And for that reason, you can't really compare it, because it's an exhibition level deal at that time. You know what I mean? So it's not
right. But I mean, I don't apples to apples. I think that it speaks to the draw of a Wally and being at the NHRA race and being in the staging lanes with John Force and Ron Capps, right? I mean, I think that we don't put enough, I don't know that we respect how much that means to so many people, right? To just be NHRA to a lot of folks is drag racing. So if you're there and you can say that you're at the facility at the same time as Erica Enders and TJ Coughlin and all those guys, I mean, I think that that's still a motivator and a difference maker, a driving force for a lot of people in the racing world. They would rather get treated poorly, park in the weeds, race for less money, but go do it at an NHRA national event where there's a Wally on the line and they might get on TV for 2 seconds. I mean, that's still enough to make people go choose that. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. Okay, let's dive in.
We better kick it into happy hour.
Because we got to kick it into happy hour.
Deal a little bit early today.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of Q&A, guys. We'll have a cocktail here with you all real quick before we dive back into some MPMC meetings. Don't we have a meeting? Who's our next meeting with, guys?
Aeromotive.
Oh, we got to bounce.
No, it's at 5, I believe. Or
okay, we
Central.
Can.
Correct.
Okay, and what's QA1 right now? Then we go to Aeromotive Fuel Systems, then Chris Alston's Chassis Works. Okay. We got a couple meetings left. Let's do a little bit of Q&A, guys. Okay, Mr. Will asking on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribing. Please, guys, make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing. Help us spread the gospel of drag racing. Hey, guys, what do you think the future of NHRA and does the AHRA have a chance to be a viable entity, or is it just a pipe dream? I literally know nothing about the AHRA. I think we've seen a couple of questions.
Is this the same guy?
Maybe the same guy
about AHRA.
And I really don't know. I mean, I think
I'm not sure what's going on with that. Maybe there's something we don't know about, or they're trying to fire that deal back up. But
yeah, I'm honestly,
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, look it up. I don't know. I think that there have been times in the past. I think the IHRA was poised for greatness a few years ago. And unfortunately, that was just a moment in time that just did not totally, it wasn't realized. I think there was a big opportunity that wasn't totally embraced. And, big business and hedge funds and whatever else, equity partners get involved and things get screwed up in a hurry. But I mean, I think the NHRA is the biggest game in town when it comes to professional drag racing. And if big events, big tracks, big markets, if those things, so long as those things are important, that'll be the tip of the sword. I do think from a perspective of visibility and all that, hard to argue against, the No Prep Kings deal right now. That's definitely, it's hot as hot can be. Kevin Stevenson asks, have you ever thought about doing a big money no prep race? Yes, we have. We probably will at some point in the future. This brand of drag racing is definitely on our radar. I mean, I think Mike mentioned, Pat Musey said this a couple of weeks ago, or said this to you, Pat, Pat said this to you, Mike, that MPK, No Prep Kings, that type of racing kind of reminds him of like Pro Mod in the 90s. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. Or really even like his pro stock days. I think he even posted a photo, Pat did himself on Facebook recently, shared a photo of one of his old pro stock cars. And he said something like, this was no prep back in the day. We've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
And he was saying that, the current No Prep Kings racing is very similar to how they used to race pro stock. Pro Mod, Pro Street probably is a great comparison to. That's probably even maybe the closest comparison.
Probably.
Considering the stock nature or whatever you want to call it of the cars in No Prep Kings. So there's no surprise that they're having success with it and that type of racing is popular.
Yeah, I agree. I got Narcoleptic Customs asks, what are we driving during sick week? I know that I'm going to ride along a little bit with somebody in a Hellcat. I know Tom Bailey's got a car kind of lined up for us to ride in a little bit. We're going to have a chase car. I was actually trying to rent a Lamborghini over the weekend. I thought, you know what? I'm going to rent a Lambo and just follow them. But man, all the Lambos that are on like that Turo website, they want like $1,000 a day. Yeah. And
we looked at that deal in Vegas, didn't we? Didn't we go in that like store in Vegas?
Yeah.
And they want to rent you a Lambo.
I was gonna try to get some sort of cool car. I actually found a guy on Instagram that rents cars that's got like a small fleet of luxury automobiles that he rents. And he told me he'd like work me a deal, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet on how good of a deal are we talking about? Because I'm after a good deal. So I'm trying to win him over a little bit.
That's why he hasn't called back.
Yeah, that's probably why he hasn't called back.
Yeah, this tight ass.
But yeah, that's the hope. Let me see this. I'm going up here. Big fan of the show. Do you guys have plans of putting on a no prep style race? Yes, Holden Heath. We just talked about that, I guess, briefly. But yeah, at some point in the future, I would really like to. Part of me has this notion of putting on an event where whatever we want to do is what we do. Where it's not like, the World Door Slammer Nationals were obviously married to Door Slammer cars. The World Series of Pro Mod was all about Pro Mod. And I've had this thought in the past of doing a different type of event where I can just do whatever I feel like, right? Where you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, you know what? If I'm feeling kind of fuel alteredy, I'm going to put on a big fuel altered race.
Well, we
talked
about
what I mean? And if funny cars are hot, let's do funny cars.
Well, no, we talked about doing a deal where you booked in, a few of the hottest of each kind and kind of run this like buffet. You know what I mean?
That's probably if I had to
love buffets, baby.
If I had to predict
where JT's safety word right there.
Yeah.
Buffet. It's true. If I had to predict what the next Drag Illustrated produced event would look like, that's exactly what I would that's exactly what I would say. A buffet. It's going to be a buffet of the most badass drag racing stuff that exists, and I'm not going to.
This guy hates Golden Corral. I mean, hates him.
I hate buffets, but I just feel at different times, and part of me is that I have such a wide interest. Like I love the sport of drag racing. Like I can get excited about going to Streetcar Takeover and seeing a bunch of import cars and a bunch of late model performance vehicles, and I can get equally excited about going to Funny Car Chaos. I can get excited about going to see Pro Mods versus Fuel Altereds at XRP right down the road. I can get excited about going to LS Fest in Bowling Green or in Vegas. I can get excited. I love drag racing. And I think sometimes that if I had one, and I don't have any regrets really, but if I did have one regret, it'd be that I hate like our races just cater to such a narrow niche that I recognize that. I mean, I remember David Rear told me this story a long time ago, and this would have been, we'd been doing the magazine for 2 or 3 years. And as you guys know, Mike, you were there in some of those early days, like almost every story we did was on a Pro Mod guy or an Outlaw 10.5 guy, pretty much, you know? And we were developing this reputation of being like a Pro Mod magazine. And David Rear, he was really good to me, always has been, Rear Morrison Racing Engines. And he calls me up and we were talking about the magazine and whatnot. And he goes, man, you know that there's a Shannon Jenkins or a Jason Scruggs at every drag strip in America. Like every drag strip has that local badass, that guy, you know, and his car may be like a mid 5-second 8th mile car, but he's like the local fast dude, you know? And it kind of just reminded me that, man, there's just a lot of people in this sport and there's big deals in a lot of different walks of the racing life. And when I think back on our races, I wish we could have painted a wider swath with some of those things, because I think we created some really magical moments, but they were magic for like a really small group of people, like a 16 guys that are racing for the World Series at the World Series of Pro Mod. You know what I mean? In NHRA legal Pro Mod cars. I think about, you know, the World Door Slammer Nationals and the headlining category being Pro Stock. I mean, those were all guys. It was 16 guys. That it's a small group of people, you know.
we got local Batman in here.
Yeah, I'm the local Batman, says Love Kent. It. You know, but it's true. There's a local, and for me, I would love to have the opportunity to put on a race where it's like Rich Bruder's there and Dean Marinas is there and they're racing X275. And then I've got Tom Bailey and Larry Larson there and they're running their Drag Week Pro Street style cars. And I got Justin Ashley racing Steve Torrance and they're in Top Fuel. And I got, you know what I mean? Like, I love the notion of bringing all those worlds together. Now, granted, I couldn't have huge fields of each one, but I could at least embrace that style of racing or that particular brand of racing. I just love the notion of that. I think that's where we'll end up doing it. I think that's what will end up happening. All right, last questions. Let's see here. Our NHRA
Eduardo Enrique Rivera wants to know World Tour Slammer Nationals.
No, we are not doing it. It's indefinitely postponed. No regrets, says Ken Deigel. Yeah. Do it at a 4-wheel. I just feel like NHRA needs something to spice it up, says Robbie Cisco. The best thing they've done is having double points meets for sportsman racers. I agree with that. How many small tracks only spray the 100 foot of concrete that had a bump converting to asphalt, and that was only swept and blown? That's for sure, man. That was like a way of life for most, you know, nitty gritty 8th mile drag strips for a long time. Wes needs to come to the Bowling Green, Kentucky event in June for the NHRA Heritage Series event. I would actually like to do that, so maybe we'll do that one of these days. I did see that 7-second Lamborghini testing at Bradenton this week. Did you see that thing? No. NC Pro Modder had a video.
Is this the one pulling
it does
the front wheels out? Yeah.
I mean, it's like legit nasty.
Yeah.
You guys need to buy a shit box and race it. Yeah, we plan on that. We've got a couple of thoughts like that. So the NHRA is going nowhere. Thanks for addressing my question. Hey, no problem, man. Thank you guys so much for viewing. Mike, JT, thank you for the time. Of course, thank you to our guests, Justin Ashley, Amber White. Thank you guys. Exciting to see big companies supporting drag racing in that fashion. I hope a 3-race trial turns into a 22-race campaign. That's my genuine hope. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. As always, huge shout out to all of our sponsors: Stroud Safety, Redline Synthetic Oils, Elite HP. Come on, guys, help me. I'm forgetting. Flow Racing, of course, our friends at Flow Racing, as well as Sand Haulers of America. Thank you guys for supporting us. Make sure you support the companies that support Wes Buck and the Wes Buck Show and Drag Illustrated. We'll see you next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, but also next Thursday night for the inaugural Drag Illustrated Awards. Is going to be lit. Don't miss it. Set an alarm. Thank you guys so much. Kent, Narcoleptic Company, Customs, thank you guys so much for your support. Vernon, everybody, we really appreciate it. Thank you all.
See you guys.
See ya.